through a few things. It was kind of an interesting set of circumstances that got me out there in the first place. I had an offer, or I was in communication with a guy named Max Zamilov, who's a scientist, and I want to just say a very big thank you to Max for reaching out and letting us use, his equipment. And I'll talk a bit more about Max as we go into this. He's also part of, let me switch over here to, where are we, this one here, so we can see the full screen, and I'm not so big on the screen. He is a scientist, indeed.
I'm a scientist.
Well, he's a scientist.
I'm a scientist.
And of course, these days, as you know, archaeology is different. Right?
But now, archaeology is completely different. Archaeology is science.
Science. So, yeah, Max is a scientist. But he
what up, Kadai Mayuchi?
He happens to own some scanning electron microscopes, and he's like, it would.
Did I follow? I think you followed me, right? I don't know if I followed you back. I'm sorry, let me go to your channel and follow you right now.
Even some of the fragments that we do have actual tool marks.
I'm sorry, I was over in China for a while, but now I'm back in
the
Canada.
finished surfaces, right? If anything that's been machined or polished, when you look at it under a powerful
welcome, what's up?
See tool marks. So even things that appear and feel smooth to the touch and the eye, you're still going to, at the microscopic level, see tool marks and indentations, and indeed we did that. I also happened to combine that with a trip. I went out to see Matt Bell. So I think some of you may know who Matt Bell is. He runs the Limitless podcast.
What is up, Kadai Mayuchi? Welcome, thank you.
Just remarkable vases and other ancient Egyptian artifacts. He's bought several more since I had the chance to see him last. So, and in fact, we recorded my podcast with him on the 1 year anniversary date of the first time I went on his show, and I think I was his first guest. And it was great to see how he's progressed, how he's updated his studio. It's fully professional, and look at some of the new vases and articles. And we'll talk a little bit about that too as we get into it. So I will try and get to questions. I will break the super chats when I can as well. Yes, I think as some of you may have known from the short, we did find some interesting things. I want to kind of provide some context around all of that, around what we found, around everything else to do with it, what my takeaways from this work was. We spent the better part of 3 days essentially with Max and with his electron microscope, looking at various little fragments.
Good morning, pull up trainee, black every day, yo, what's up?
So Max, just so you know,
thank you, welcome.
He is, these days he's an entrepreneur, he's a scientist, he's working on applied
welcome.
sciences. He has a PhD in physics. He taught at Penn State for I think 8 years. Most of his research does focus on ultrasonics and machining and cavitation. In fact, he has a fusion reactor, and if you sort of search his name, you'll find this type of thing where it says that his research focuses on fusion induced by cavitation, where he injects deuterium gas into a reactor filled with water, causing bubbles to crash and produce neutrons and heat. This process is not specifically cold fusion, but rather an equivalent of sound fusion. And in fact, so this picture here that you're seeing was actually in Max's lab in one of the rooms of his house, and this is a large titanium rod that he has that he's using to induce that sort of cavitation and do ultrasonics. And it's actually quite an interesting. We spent a little bit of time talking about this because it's one of the reasons that he came back and talked about potentially one of the takeaways from this whole experiment was that potentially ultrasonics might have been involved in the actual machining of these vases and these fragments, because one of those key takeaways was that the fragments themselves were just remarkably clean. There was actually very little to see in them. The objective was really to look at tool marks and to look in those stones and try and look for embedded fragments of material, metals in particular, that might be remnants from whatever machining process was used to make them. That might sound like, you wouldn't see any metal in that from machining process, but at a microscopic level, when you're down there looking at microns, that however it was done, if it was machined with metal, there's a good chance that there's still going to be embedded fragments of that metal, little tiny slivers, only a few microns potentially in size, that are embedded in that metal that are only really visible under conditions like a scanning electron microscope. That's how it would work. That's how it would be if these things were actually made with, say, copper tubes and grinding with sand and copper. You would find evidence for that, I think, even to this day. And one of the key takeaways was that they were actually remarkably clean. But what metals we did find were very interesting, and we'll get into that kind of up front too. The other big takeaway that I think is worthy of as much attention as the things that we did find was what we didn't find. And what we didn't find on any of the things we looked at was copper. There was just no copper anywhere in any of these samples, which is interesting because that is the mainstream explanation for how a lot of the parts of the machining was done. In particular, the tubular drill, because that's kind of like the first step of making one of these vessels. You'll often find at the base of them, either the plate or the vessel itself, you'll have that marking from a tubular drill. We know that these sort of tubular drill holes were made with something. And the mainstream explanation for that has always been, well, they used, copper tubes and they ground on them with sand and things like that. And that certainly doesn't seem to be the case from what we found from this. And I like this little shot here just from Max's lab, and we'll get into the actual fragments here in a minute, but it's just an indication of how you can, how ultrasonics can work, because this rod that he uses to produce like these ultrasonics, it's not in contact with anything except like the oil that he uses in the reactor, and just that cavitation and that that vibration, it's actually wearing away the edge of that rod. You can see that quite clearly here, how the rod's actually getting worn through this process despite not being in physical contact with anything else. And if I play this, you'll see a little bit more of his lab here. You actually see this little fusion reactor that he has set up for cavitation reaction. That's the rod. This is his reactor. It's filled with oil. I think he was doing experiments to try and see if under different conditions he could alter the rate of, radioactive decay of different elements. And he's like putting basically deuterium infused titanium into there as reactive fuel to see this. The whole thing's, surrounded by borax, boxes of borax, and boron's being a very good radiation shield. He's not trying to shield from the reactor. He's trying to shield the reactor from cosmic rays, so he can get accurate measurements within the reactor. The way that he works, so this is interesting stuff he's doing. It wasn't the focus of it. And he said, yeah, sometimes the glass actually breaks from this the cavitation that he generates in there, and this is all like really cool stuff. It's a lot of the things that he was doing, but he's very qualified, very smart guy. You can Google him. He's got a bunch of patents. He does a lot of work. He does applied sciences these days, but very kind of Max to reach out to us and ask the question and let us play with his very expensive scanning electron microscopes, which we'll get into. He also happens to have in his garage like an 8-foot tall Tesla coil, which we didn't get the chance to turn on, but I thought this was also pretty damn impressive, right? How many people have a Tesla coil in their garage like this? Pretty amazing. So this is the setup, and we'll go through kind of how these work. This is actually two scanning electron microscopes, one on the left, one on the right. The one on the right, you might notice a couple of differences here with this cylinder. So the one on the right, we use the one on the left. The one on the right, its detector is actually cooled by liquid nitrogen, and this is the tank for liquid nitrogen. There wasn't any liquid nitrogen in it. The one on the left is cooled by, I think, cooling fans. You'll notice in the footage when we're in the room, it's pretty noisy because you've got fans running that are cooling the detectors and the equipment, and obviously there's computer hardware and all that stuff. And also the chamber itself, which is this drawer that you can see that's pulled out, and this is the drawer and the other one pushed in. This is held under vacuum, so the machine only works when the sample chamber or the area with the piece of stone in it is at a vacuum. So there's a vacuum pump that's always running. So it's fairly noisy, but if you want the standard definition of how an electron microscope works, it's essentially what I've got here, which is a type of electron microscope that produces images of a sample by scanning the surface with a focused beam of electrons. The electrons interact with atoms in the sample, producing various signals that contain information about the surface topography and composition of the sample. That's what we're doing here. So not only do you get this sort of very powerful microscope to look at the surface, you're also getting returns that tell you the composition of what the surface is made up of. So what are the elements essentially that are in the sample that you're looking at based on the returns of electrons that come off it. The electron beam is scanned in a raster scan pattern. The position of the beam is combined with the intensity of the detected signal to produce an image. And there's a couple different images that you'll see as we go through this. There's two different detectors. You kind of have that primary detector, which is more of a topographical view, but most SEMs also have a secondary detector, which actually works by picking up like essentially secondary electrons that are emitted by atoms that are excited by the electron beam. Essentially what happens is, this beam hits it, and whatever it's hitting shoots off secondary electrons, and it picks those up, and you get, metals, for example, give off a lot of secondary electrons, so they appear brighter on the screen. So you kind of have these two views of like a straight topographical view, and then one that is secondary or backscatter view that shows you, okay, metals and different elements in the material is going to show up differently based on how many electrons it's emitting. You can also get bright surfaces based on angles. So if you have like a particular angle of stone, think of like a piece of crystal, like quartz or something like that, that's reflecting the electrons. That'll also show up brightly, things like that. So, some SEMs can achieve resolutions of better than 1 nanometer, which is what, a millionth of a meter or something like that. It's incredibly tiny. A micron or a micrometer is a thousandth, I think, of a millimeter. And with these ones, these are fairly old. They're not like modern day.
Yo, Sailor Curse, what up, man?
But they're sufficient for the purposes.
What
of
up, my brother?
And they do give you like
thanks, man.
Thousands x kind of magnification down to that.
What is up, Sailor Curse? Thanks, brother.
Really, I am trying to keep up with the chat here as we go, and I'll play this, and we'll get a little bit of an explanation about how this works and the first sample kind of being put in there, and we'll talk about the samples here in a minute after.
How are you, buddy? I hope you're doing well, man. I'm so jet lagged. I'm so tired. I have so much anxiety. I think lifting weights will make me feel good. I hope.
Like full whole vases in this. You have to sit it up on this platform.
Thanks, man.
Pretty close to the detectors.
Thank you, brother.
At the top underneath.
It was good, man. It was good. Thanks, dude. It was good.
Signals and to get that elemental composition analysis.
It went well. It was pretty long. I flew through Shanghai, Tokyo, Calgary, and to Ottawa. Yo, thanks, man. Thanks, buddy. Thanks, man. I appreciate that, my man. I'm so glad. I'm just glad my friends are watching it, Footage is pretty crazy. I don't want to, I'm a humble guy, but dude, that footage, fucking 2 hours, it's so valuable to just like people in the world. And I'm just a reporter, right? I'm just reporting on it, but man, like, the information that it has, like, the stone is blue, man. You see the stone? It's like a friggin'...
I think this is at the back.
It's friggin' blue, man. It's not gray.
Vacuum pump. I'm pretty sure this is the vacuum pump.
That was what I was wondering why. It's incredible, y'all. Thanks, man. I was wondering why they were doing all this work for this like, dark gray, look like limestone, but it's some sort of like igneous blue or even metamorphic blue rock.
Excellent.
You never get to see. Yeah.
Okay, so
we can look on it on Google Earth. We can do that.
Put the piece in the.
Let's do that.
In the container, it'll pump it down. The vacuum pump will go. You'll spin up your basically your electron beam. At this point, I think it was the beam energy was like 20 kilovolts. We did actually test this with copper too. Later, he did have a copper bar, like a copper rod.
Right, let's go to the Yangshan Quarry on Google Earth. Let's do it. I'm gonna make a video of this too, I think.
You kind of have all of your controls, the vacuum, the strength, the focal beam, the magnification length, all that type of stuff in here. And I kind of ask Max here a little bit about the microscope itself. So it's in there. Your kind of
Thanks,
cable
brother.
management, my kind of cable management too, mate. Yeah, well, I might.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Whatever you want to go.
Well, there's a whole.
So we got Google Earth right here, right?
The one that Matt's got The Max hasn't stolen these electron microscopes. They're his. Part of his business and what he does is he actually refurbishes and sells scientific equipment. So he's an entrepreneur as well. He does run a business. If you want to buy an electron microscope, I'm pretty
What the
sure
fuck
he has
happened to
some.
the camera? Why?
If it's worth,
What?
I think he said like new electron microscopes might
What
be
is
like
this?
250,000, like $250,000.
Why?
But you can pick up second-hand units like this between, I don't know,
Right.
25
Sorry.
to 40,000, depending on condition and
Cooler.
what they're doing. Brother, Nick, $2 super chat, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Alright.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
My brother. Yes, Nick
I'm
is,
slow, man. I'm so
been
slow.
streaming some Warhammer 40K over
Oh, heck yeah. That's sick. Sorry, Baron. Oh, I can't pin this?
And I was here with Russ too.
You only pin a
So,
message. You
Russ,
can't
from
pin,
Brothers of the Serpent, Russ Allen, my good friend, was over here with me. And he
Nice.
actually also
Yes.
joined me on that build.
Katayamaiuichi.
A couple of different samples that have been given to
Heck
us
yeah.
that were useful for looking in here. And I'll show you the samples. We'll get into
Alright.
that in a little bit. First,
Cooler.
let's just talk a little bit
Here
about
is
how
China, right?
scanning electron microscope works and what we're doing.
You make this 2D. You can't make it 2D. Whatever. Wait, this is China. Shanghai. Nanjing. So this is where the quarry is, right here. Nanjing, China.
Yeah, the flatter the better, right? So a little fragment, see this this is a salt and pepper diorite.
The
Actually,
city
that
has
one
10
actually
million
has-
people.
We zoom right into it. What's interesting about
So
this
the
fragment, we'll talk a
quarry
bit
is
more about
over
this, but
here.
It has the markings of the
This river
basically the
goes
tubules.
to-
So this is the flat section here, and then
This is on the this is the Yangtze
arcs up,
River,
but it has these markings from what looks like a tubular drill.
and the quarry is
In it, and we'll take a closer look at
Right
the samples
here.
here in a minute.
see that? So where my mouse is where the quarry is.
The copper is
Yeah.
for calibration. It gives like a certain line.
Right.
I'm putting, dude, I have drone footage. I'm gonna put the drone video up tomorrow.
So it's
That's what I'm gonna do. I
what
think.
It basically shoots X-rays through it to give you.
Yeah, it's shooting an electron beam, and electron beam generates X-rays.
Right.
Those X-rays allow determining the composition of the sample.
Right.
That's what we will attempt to do.
So we're looking. Yeah. So we'll get. Obviously, you'll get some results for the composition of the stone itself, but potentially also.
See, they valued the
if there's any
stone.
remnant
They
inclusions
valued the
from
stone for whatever reason.
Plot and the tool.
Yeah. Okay.
They valued it a lot.
Bring it in the vacuum, or vacuum.
Enough to put in all that effort.
Then I'll be able to turn on the electron beam, and it will start scanning, and it gives a surface.
No, dude, I haven't.
X-rays on the
Yeah, I'm totally friggin' getting blazed.
crunch to produce a spectrum, and the spectrum will have beeps.
Yep.
When the software is
Yeah, I
able
know.
to look at the beeps,
I have not.
what the composition is.
Right.
Copper, cobalt, iron, and
I'm just jet lagged. I'm so
And you
tired.
can get alloys. I mean, it identifies specific elements within an alloy.
percentages of what it thinks the composition is. Maybe like 25% of copper.
That's a good comment, David.
Silicon,
Yeah. So we're expecting. Yeah. I mean, with the stone itself, I guess we're expecting silicon
silicon, oxygen levels,
mostly. Yeah.
maybe sodium, calcium, things like that.
Right.
Metals are easily recognizable.
Yes.
That's what this is good for.
Lightsaber wouldn't leave a residue, indeed.
Superficially metal. Of course, you can look only on the surface. You cannot look inside the sample.
Right. So it's just on the surface. Cool. Asa, I assume you're watching this on a computer or a device. You're pretty much technically a rich person tinkering with expensive toys as well right now. Just saying. Beam energy, 20 kilovolts. It's Florida. That's what you wear in Florida, isn't it? So yeah, pressure's coming down. So pressure's coming down, and we go over and we generate an image, and we'll get to that in a second. So first, let's talk a little bit about the vases. So where these things come from. Now, this is some footage of some, while we're talking about them, of some of the new acquisitions that Matt's made. Some just absolutely beautiful hardstone vases. In his collection's up. He's got quite a number of them now. He has been scanning them. Now, This was actually in his podcast room, and he has the collection out, and we were playing with it, and I got the chance to film and take photographs of many of them. They were phenomenal. Like, that's Matt, there's Russ. We were playing with his expensive toys, and these are expensive toys. That one has some gold plating around the handles. This is another one that's really interesting. It's also a new one I hadn't seen before. That is it's also looks like it's like probably porphyry or something like that. This one has, obviously the gold plating around the lip is interesting, but what is a probably more interesting feature to me that's on this and on a couple of other vessels that you'll see is you actually have these, the lug handles. Most of them, they have some curvature to them that matches the curvature of the vase. But on a couple of these newer ones that he's got, they're actually concave. They curve the other way, which is, you literally can't do that in a lathe process. I mean, the lug handles are a challenge for any even just regular lathing process as it is, because you'd have to leave like a bullnose all the way around the vessel and come back with another procedure to mill off the material and then leave your handles. But then to actually get a concave shape like this is a whole other challenge. Like, you need a tool with a different radius that's coming in from the side to actually shape it that way. You can see it clearly there, right? You can see that shape to it is actually, it does narrow pretty much on not just here but also on top. Like, it's almost like a cylindrical concaveness to it, if you know what I mean. Yeah, he's got some pretty sweet shoes on. I'll give him that. And it goes with the purple theme in the room. Wait till you see the podcast. It's quite a room. Phenomenal vase, and some of these have proven to be just incredibly well made, is what I'd say. In fact, and he has been continuing to get these scanned by basically CT X-rays as well as structured light scanners, but CT X-rays have a lot more accuracy to them. I do have my hand. I've got my hands on a lot of the scan reports. I'm working on a vase update video because there's been a lot of work happening. It's been a while since we've talked about the vessels. This one in particular I found to be just super interesting. I've never seen one with quite this shape. You can see it has that same shape as the vessel. It doesn't look like it's been squished down flat. This is one of Matt's videos, and as you can tell, like, a lot of these spin. They just keep on spinning. They're just incredibly well made. How old are these? Most of these, I mean, just anyone is going to tell you, even the Egyptologists will tell you, they are at the youngest. You're talking Old Kingdom, ancient Egypt, 3rd, 4th dynasty, and they go back in time. Is one of the reasons that I find them so intriguing, is that they're artifacts that can be buried with people, and they were buried with people, and they've been found in pre-dynastic burials going back many thousands of years prior to the Old Kingdom ever starting, the beginning of the ancient Egyptian civilization. Rube.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
Naysayers, thanks for the $10, man. Aussie $10, I appreciate it. Naysayers will claim prior contamination. Can you definitively prove there has been no contamination? We're going to talk about that when we get there. Essentially, no, these samples were never really handled or intended for this type of work. We did, and I'll get to this right at the end, we did take one sample and deliberately contaminate it to see what that would look like. And I'll show you the difference between that and what we found with the actual embedded fragments of metal. No, but I'll talk a bit more about that as we get into it with contamination. I'm sure the naysayers are going to, I'm predicting they'll be like, well, they're fake, you planted them, you're lying, that sort of nonsense. It's just like, no, head in the sand, I can't believe what you're saying. Any other reason will do, kind of naysaying. I'm sure they will. And I'm sure people will say contamination, but there's a difference between contamination and like embedded bits of material that you can literally see in the stone, which is what we observed and we'll get to. So put it that way. What type of granite are these vases? They're not all granite. Granite's kind of like an overarching term for lots of different types of stone. Some of them are diorite, some of them are porphyry. You might have ones made from schist. There's like 100 different names, cyanite, all these different materials. There's a lot in that overarching umbrella of roughly granite, and varies in hardness from things from like 5 through to 7, 8, even 9 on the Mohs scale. If it's got a bunch of corundum in it, for example. So yeah, when it comes to the vases, and if you're interested, one thing I did want to just throw up here was if you guys are seeing this for the first time and you don't know much about the vases and the vessels, I have put a lot of content out about these things over the last year or two, really, at So if you go to my channel, and by the way, I did pass 500k subscribers just recently, so 500,000 subscribers. Thank you to everybody out there who subscribed. It's much appreciated. I'm going to mention it in this video they've got coming out pretty soon. But you can scroll down and find a lot on these ancient vessels, and in fact, in order, if you wanted to go, I would start with this one, which was now about a year ago, which is, changing the game for ancient precision. This was the first vessel that was scanned and the results were analysed. I did an update on that, talking with the people who did the analysis and the work. Then after that all came out, there was like basically open source, crowdsourced research started happening. Mark Vist wrote his amazing article analysing the 3D model and reverse engineering and mathematics that have gone into the design behind the vessel. So there's a video here about that, talking about were ancient computers used to design this object. I do talk about these vessels and stuff in my presentation videos. Then we got our hands on, and Matt got involved, we got our hands on more vessels and vases, and we started to scan those and analyse those. I've got a long video on that includes a lot of that. We also took them into a precision workshop and did metrology experiments on them. That's what this video is about. Talk about them in podcasts, talk about it with Chris Dunn, talked about it in my recent presentation video. This one is like a full-on, essentially, presentation that's an overall theory. It gets into that, so that's out there if you want to get into more detail about the vessels and the vases. I'm not going to go into all that detail today, but I do want to talk about this one we just saw a little bit, because this thing is incredible. One thing I'll say to you that I saw on a couple of different vases that's remarkable is it's this angle in here. So it's like this sharp angle that's beneath this lip, right? These have little radiuses to them, or radii. Like machining this out in this single piece is phenomenally difficult, and it's quite an achievement. And it's an even more astounding achievement on this vase in particular when you look at the scan results. So again, this thing was scanned, I think, with a CT X-ray, because we're talking about micron level resolution. And I wanted to share with you one page from this report. I'm going to talk more about this in an upcoming vase video, but some of you may understand what you're looking at here, but if you don't, let me kind of explain this and spell this out for people, because this is kind of mind-blowing. What you're seeing here is a measurement of the diameter of the lip, both horizontally and vertically, and it's basically taken with a measurement. So it's scanned, it's a very accurate scan down to the sub-micron level, and you can see, and the units here are in millimeters. So it's, if you look at the y-axis and the x-axis, you're looking at measurement of 126.7183 millimeters on the y-axis this way, and then 126.7179 millimeters on the x-axis, the horizontal slope. Now those numbers aren't the same, but they're very close. So close, in fact, that the deviation is less than a micron. In fact, it's 4/10 of a micron. That's the difference. That's how perfectly circular it is. A micron is a thousandth of a millimeter. That's how small that is. You're talking about the size of a bacteria. 1 micron, and the perfection in terms of roundness, the distance on this lip from this side between the horizontal and the vertical axes of this vase is 4/10 of a micron. So this is the deviation from what the nominal is. You can see it's like 0.0415, 0.0411, so 4/10 of a millimeter, 4/10 of a micron. That's 0.0004 of a millimeter in deviation. So do that with your rubbing sand and sticks and primitive lathes and stuff. I just think it's absolutely phenomenal. I've not seen, this is one of the most precisely measured things that I've seen in all of these. And in fact, some of these new vessels that we've been looking at have the same sort of precision that we've seen on the ones that I've already talked about, and in some cases like this one, it exceeds it. This is truly remarkable when you get it. Talk to a machinist about it if you want to put this into some context. But machinists out there, people that do precision work, they'll understand just how remarkable this measurement is. I just wanted to throw that one out there because I just think it's absolutely incredible. Like 4/10 of a micron is just unbelievable. I sent this to Chris Dunn earlier, and yeah, he was like blown away by it. So Empire, we are $10, man. Heartening to see someone with means funding research. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, and that's thanks to
You're
Max
a gentleman and a scholar.
for letting us do that. I certainly can't afford to buy a scanning electron microscope, and I don't know how to use one. So having a guy like Max is extremely useful. So let's talk about the fragments that we scanned. These are fragments of hard stone vessels, potentially plates. More likely, I think, vessels and vases. They all sort of fit into the same umbrella. There are several fragments here. I'll let this play. So, interesting one here. I just want to pause this real quick to look at this one. This is actually a really cool piece. It's a quartz piece, rock crystal, silica. Essentially, it's like silicate dioxide is essentially, that's what quartz is, SiO2. And you can see quite clearly it has this flat bottom on it, and at the bottom you've got the remnants of a circular, like the tubular drill. You can see that marked very clearly from here. Now these samples were given to us by private collectors essentially, and I know for a fact many of them have come from Saqqara. So the third dynasty site is generally where they're attributed. They were never collected. I mean, we can't really. They're not pristine. These aren't things that were collected with scanning electron microscope work. I can't ever say that word. Microscopy in mind. We were never, so they could be contaminated. We don't really know. And the other thing I kind of want to emphasize at this point is that these results are very preliminary, right? There's a lot of questions yet that we need to answer. I think there's a lot of comparison work that we need to do. We need to take samples of stone that have been worked in modern times. We need to take samples of just stone that are worked with primitive methods and look at those. I think there's a ton of comparative work that needs to be done here. But I can tell you these are genuine samples of ancient Egyptian vessels. The stone type is exactly the same. In fact, when we look at little pieces like this, or like this, I mean, you actually see the lip, and I showed this on the Patreon live stream. I've shown some of these samples. They have that tapering, so they start like thicker down here, and they get very thin to right up under this lip, and then you have this sort of machined, this perfect rim on the lip, which you would expect to see on a large plate or a vase, that type of thing. They've got the same tool marks. They are 100% fragments of ancient Egyptian hardstone vessels, matching all of those things from that period. They were found in the sites where they found all of the vases, that type of stuff. These are salt and pepper diorite. So we have, like, this is salt and pepper diorite. Different. You can see how they're different types of stone. They're called salt and pepper because it's white and black. And then you have this piece of quartz, which is essentially rock crystal, with the tool mark in it. We had a couple with obvious tool marks, but again, we're also looking for the nicer machining marks. William Robbins, man. Thank you very much, sir. $10.
You're a gentleman
Thank you,
and a
Ben.
scholar.
Hope to join you on a tour someday. Cheers, man. Hope to see you on one as well. We do have a couple. We're running a trip to Egypt in March. That's all on my website. You can find out all details about that if you're interested. Like spinning Pats, $5. Thank you as well. Do you think we'll ever learn the how and why of this stuff? It's such a colossal mystery. I can't think of anything on earth that seems so out of place. I mean, we're trying to get to the bottom of it, is what I'd say. Like, I think I'm a little discouraged that it doesn't seem like the archaeological establishment is interested in doing this type of work on this material, like trying to delve into the mystery and look at it. I mean, they have the resources, they've got universities, I'm sure they've got access to this type of machinery. They for damn sure have access to, objects and artifacts, and they're the ones who find it and hoard it all away and put it behind, locked doors. They could be doing this sort of research, and I think it would be an interesting one. Like, for example, I think archaeological departments could probably help themselves by engaging with the engineering departments of those same universities to try and do reverse engineering on how some of these things were actually made, rather than just jumping to this like, no, it was copper tubes and primitive methods, because there's this scene on the wall that doesn't match this stuff at all, but maybe can explain how alabaster vessels were made. I think if they actually opened their mind to some of these things and engaged with their engineering departments, it could be really interesting. And they could do scanning and analysis, and they could do digital preservation of artifacts, all that sort of stuff. But it's wild to me that it's like YouTube punters and podcasters that are getting opportunities to actually do this and put samples like this under a scanning electron microscope. It's crazy. Big Red, $10. respect for the research. It's time logic overrides children's stories pawned off as science and history. I agree. Thank you so much.
Thank you
sir.
very much, sir.
And David Stick
You're a
Hansen, like the
gentleman
sound
and a
effects.
scholar.
I'm gonna try some yourself. Yes, mate. Get a soundboard. I use this thing. It's my green screen's colouring it out, but and I've just unplugged it. So maybe no more sound effects right now because I use an Ableton Launchpad for the sound effects. So yes, thank you. I will have to try and get that going again in a minute. All right, so we've got these samples. They are what they are. These are preliminary results, okay? I want to stress that. There's more research that needs to be done. It's difficult to draw conclusions from this. It's very interesting. These are genuine samples. They were found in places where these same vessels were found. But they were never handled with the intent of putting them in the scanning electron microscope. So is contamination possible? Yes, of course. I mean, you just... And I was here with Russ too. I want to say that as well. Like Russ from the Brothers of the Serpent, Russ Allen, my good friend, was over here with me, and he actually also materials. There's a lot in that overarching umbrella. Phenomenal. I've not seen. This is one of the most precisely measured things that I've seen in all of these. And in fact, some of these new vessels that we've been looking at have, you know, the same sort of precision that we've seen on the ones that I've already talked about, and in some cases. In particular, when you look at the scan results. So again, this thing was scanned, I think, with a CT X-ray because we're talking about, you know, micron level resolution. And I wanted to share with you one page from this report. I'm going to talk more about this in an upcoming phase video. But some of you, may understand what you're looking at here. But if you don't, let me kind of explain this and spell this out for people, because this is kind of mind blowing. What you're seeing here is a measurement of the diameter of the lip, both horizontally and vertically, and it's basically taken with a measurement. So it's scanned, it's very accurate scan down to the submicron level, and you can see, and the units here are in millimeters. So it's, if you look at the y-axis and the x-axis, you're looking at measurement of 126.7183 millimeters on the y-axis, so this way, and then 126.7179 millimeters on the x-axis, the horizontal slope. Now, those numbers aren't the same, but they're very close. So close, in fact, that the deviation is less than a micron. In fact, it's 0.4 of a micron. That's the difference. That's how perfectly circular this is. A micron is a thousandth of a millimeter. That's how small that is. You're talking about the size of a bacteria. 1 micron. And the perfection in terms of roundness, the distance on this lip from this side between the horizontal and the vertical axes of this vase is 0.4 of a micron. So this is the deviation from what the nominal is. You can see it's like 0.0415, 0.0411. So 0.4 of a millimeter. 0.4 of a micron. That's 0.0004 of a millimeter in deviation. So I do that with your rubbing sand and sticks and primitive lathes and stuff. I just think it's absolutely phenomenal. I've not seen, this is one of the most precisely measured things that I've seen in all of these. And in fact, some of these new vessels that we've been looking at have, you know, the same sort of precision that we've seen on the ones that I've already talked about, and in some cases like this one, it exceeds it. This is truly remarkable when you get to talk to a machinist about it. If you want to put this into some context, but machinists out there, people that do precision work, they'll understand just how remarkable this measurement is. I just wanted to throw that one out there because I just think it's absolutely incredible. Like 0.4 of a micron is just unbelievable. I sent this to Chris Dunn earlier. Yeah, he was like blown away by it. So, Empire, we are $10, man. Heartening to see someone with means funding research. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, and that's thanks to
You're
Max
a gentleman and a scholar.
for letting us do that. I certainly can't afford to buy a scanning electron microscope, and I don't know how to use one. So having a guy like Max is extremely useful. So let's talk about the fragments that we scanned. These are fragments of hard stone vessels, potentially plates, more likely I think vessels and vases. They all sort of fit into the same umbrella. There are several fragments here. I'll let this play. So interesting one here. I just want to pause this real quick to look at this one. This is actually a really cool piece. It's a quartz piece, rock crystal, silica. Essentially it's like silica dioxide is essentially, that's what quartz is, SiO2. And you can see quite clearly it has this flat bottom on it, and at the bottom you've got the remnants of a circular, like a, the tubular drill. You can see that marked very clearly from here. Now these samples were given to us by private collectors essentially, and I know for a fact many of them have come from Saqqara. So just the Third Dynasty site is generally where they're attributed. They were never collected. I mean, we can't really. They're not pristine. These aren't things that were collected with scanning electron microscope work. I can't ever say that word, microscopy, in mind. We were never, so they could be contaminated. We don't really know. And the other thing I kind of want to emphasize at this point is that these results are very preliminary, right? There's a lot of questions yet that we need to answer. I think there's a lot of comparison work that we need to do. We need to take samples of stone that have been worked in modern times. We need to take samples of just stone that are worked with primitive methods and look at those. I think there's a ton of comparative work that needs to be done here. But I can tell you these are genuine samples of ancient Egyptian vessels. The stone type is exactly the same. In fact, when we look at little pieces like this or like this, I mean, you actually see the lip, and I showed this on the Patreon live stream. I've shown some of these samples. They have that tapering, so they start like thicker down here, and they get very thin to right up under this lip, and then you have this sort of machine, this perfect rim on the lip, which you would expect to see on a large plate or a vase, that type of thing. They've got the same tool marks. They are 100% fragments of ancient Egyptian hardstone vessels, matching all of those things from that period. They were found in the sites where they found all of the vases, that type of stuff. These are salt and pepper diorite. So we have, like, this is salt and pepper diorite. Different. You can see how they're different types of stone. They're called salt and pepper because it's white and black. And then you have this piece of quartz, which is essentially rock crystal, with the tool mark in it. We had a couple with obvious tool marks, but again, we're also looking for the nicer machining marks. William Robbins, man. Thank you very much, sir. $10.
You're a gentleman
Thank you,
and a
Ben.
scholar.
Hope to join you on a tour someday. Cheers, man. Hope to see you on one as well. We do have a couple. We're running a trip to Egypt in March. That's all on my website. You can find out all details about that if you're interested. Like spinning Pats, $5. Thank you as well. Do you think we'll ever learn the how and why of this stuff? It's such a colossal mystery. I can't think of anything on Earth that seems so out of place. I mean, we're trying to get to the bottom of it, is what I'd say. Like, I think I'm a little discouraged that it doesn't seem like the archaeological establishment is interested in doing this type of work on this material, like trying to delve into the mystery and look at it. I mean, they have the resources. They've got universities. I'm sure they've got access to this type of machinery. They for damn sure have access to, objects and artifacts, and they're the ones who find it and hoard it all away and put it behind, locked doors. They could be doing this sort of research, and I think it would be an interesting one. Like, for example, I think archaeological departments could probably help themselves by engaging with the engineering departments of those same universities to try and do reverse engineering on how some of these things were actually made, rather than just jumping to this like, no, it was copper tubes and primitive methods, because there's this scene on the wall that doesn't match this stuff at all, but maybe can explain how alabaster vessels were made. I think if they actually opened their mind to some of these things and engaged with their engineering departments, it could be really interesting. And they could do scanning and analysis, and they could do digital preservation of artifacts, all that sort of stuff. But it's wild to me that it's like YouTube punters and podcasters that are getting opportunities to actually do this and put samples like this under a scanning electron microscope. It's crazy. Big Red, $10. respect for the research. It's time logic overrides children's stories pawned off as science and history. I agree. Thank you so much.
Thank you
sir.
very much, sir.
And David Stig
You're a
Hansen, like the
gentleman
sound
and a
effects.
scholar.
I'm gonna try some yourself. Yes, mate. Get a soundboard. I use this thing. It's my green screen's coloring it out, but I know I've just unplugged it. So maybe no more sound effects right now because I use an Ableton Launchpad for the sound effects. So yes, thank you. I will have to try and get that going again in a minute. All right, so we've got these samples. They are what they are. These are preliminary results, okay? I want to stress that. There's more research that needs to be done. It's difficult to draw conclusions from this. It's very interesting. These are genuine samples. They were found in places where these same vessels were found. But they were never handled with the intent of putting them in a scanning electron microscope. So is contamination possible? Yes, of course. I mean, who knows what the history of these things or where they've been. I mean, if you were to go and try and find a pristine sample somewhere, you're a scientist, you would have to bag that thing up and not touch it and do all that sort of stuff. And even Max, like we were playing with him, he's like, yes, don't handle them too much because your hands can contaminate them. But overall, we found very little in the way of contamination. So let's get into the results. I'll try and catch up on chat.
Increasing the filament drive, so we have a decent beam. Kind of like
And
a
while I'm at
flashlight.
it, let me just do
A certain power, so you can get an image.
this.
Sneaking on that too. Sorry.
Okay. Alright, so I do have an image here. Let me bring it into focus.
So how bends? Okay, so 2,000 microns.
Yeah, so it's only 24x magnification, so it's an overview. We need to locate the tool mark because for me right now it's hard to tell where the tool mark is.
So
You can drive it with that.
So what you're seeing is the image that's coming up, and this is kind of the topographical primary image
Yo,
of
what's up,
the
Christian?
electron
How you doing,
microscope.
bro?
You see
Good
we're at
seeing you.
24x magnification. You adjust the focus and whatnot, and then he can control it with a little joystick. Full screen, yeah. I mean, we can go as close. We can go a bit more on this. The full screen video will be. I'll definitely be. I'm doing a produced video on this, and this will have a lot more full screen on it. So.
Yeah, there's this stage. And also okay, it's a little bit more focused now, right? So
Oh, there.
we got it.
So we got the sample back, right?
So we'll fish around for the tool mark.
I know if you're watching on a cell phone, it's going to be tough, but.
And we'll zoom in on the
So
tool-
this is the
tool
first
mark once
piece.
we find it.
And we're trying to find the tool marks, right?
So even you think even with
So the way this works is this line. I originally thought I get this. I'm sure I'll repeat this later because I got this wrong. But I thought like, okay, this is 2,500 microns, so 2.5 millimeters, and I thought this was the width of the screen. It's not. This yellow line is 2.5 millimeters. So at 19x, essentially this is 2.5 millimeters on this yellow line, right? And we can go up to like 1,000, 1,500x, 2,000x.
polishing like those smooth surfaces should still be at
Yeah,
high magnification tool marks.
Yeah, I mean, any kind of processing leaves marks because you cannot
Yeah.
do atomic precision,
Yeah,
manufacturing.
true. Right. Yeah.
Even with atomic precision, there will
You
be
still
something
see it.
caught in it. All right, so I
just
think
turned the
it's
sample
sharp
down a bit.
probably as it gets.
Yep.
Phases on other planets, not that I know of.
You definitely see a ridge there or something, right?
So you start to see features appearing in the stone.
I thought I put it in the middle, but maybe not.
See, Max has got that little joystick there to move it left or right. You can also give it coordinates.
Maybe I should have went up and down as opposed to side to side. Because I moved it about an inch from its center point.
We've got a bunch to get through here. So in the audio in there, where I've left audio in there is like audio to here. To here.
If you recall, it was pretty centered on.
Yeah.
Well, let's try to come down instead.
So you start to see tool marks. You can start to see machining marks in different directions on it.
I'm gonna put it there.
Wouldn't they have shit in space? You ever heard of the Black Knight satellite, bro? It's an interesting rabbit hole. I'm not claiming anything about the Black Knight, but it's an interesting artifact. I mean, you know, it's one of those internet rabbit holes you'll never get to the bottom of. Is there a Y-Files episode on that thing yet? That guy does some wild shit.
I think it should be pretty obvious,
great.
right? So it's a pretty big gouge there, right?
Yeah. And there are like lines in it, but I don't know if it's the.
Yeah, that was maybe it. Okay.
It was a
So
Y-Files.
we
Yeah, we
reached
get
the
to.
edge. Okay.
Oh, that's cool.
So we know we are at the edge. So
This has got to be part of it.
that's got to be part of it.
Thank you very much,
Well, how about
sir.
I look here?
For a gentleman and a scholar.
My thing's Redux. $2 donation for a Schwarzenegger soundboard. I don't have Schwarzenegger on here, but I'll add it to it. Thank you very much.
Let's see.
So you can see the edge, right? We've hit the edge of the sample. This looks rounded on the bottom here because this is the detector, right? It's a circular detector. It's not actually rounded here. This is just the aperture of the, you know, the whatever's detecting this. So you get the edge of the sample here.
So it started building, you know, composition,
Get through the chopper.
and it's telling us it's silicon and aluminum.
Okay, so you start to see this is so then he picks a spot, right? So you can see this is the edge of the tool mark here. So this is where those circular saw or the tubular drills, I should say, marks were. You can see these ridges, and now we eventually do label these peaks, but the way this works is you select a little area like a tiny little crosshair dot, and it hits it with a beam of electrons, and then it's using those X-rays to then try and determine. Essentially, it's a spectrometer result of what are the elements that are in it, and so you get different peaks, and as it builds a return, the system is kind of guessing at the elements that make it up, but you can challenge it and you can look at the peak. So different elements will generate different peaks, sometimes multiple peaks for the same element at different lengths here. So that basically what you do is this guesses it as it's building it up, and then you can go and confirm it on the table, on the periodic table. Ahmed Adley, dude.
Thank you
Ahmed
very
Adley.
much, sir.
Shout out in
You're a
chat to Ahmed
gentleman
Adley.
and a
Thank you so
scholar.
much for the $10. Ahmed's amazing. Ahmed is an engineer, he's an Egyptian engineer. He does similar content to me. He focuses on the technological aspects of ancient Egypt. He does it for an Arabic audience. He produces phenomenal videos. Highly recommend checking out his channel too. There are subtitles available for I think most of them. I've watched all of them. They're fantastic. Yeah, Ahmed's great. He's been working with Chris Dunn. He's been instrumental in trying to lead the charge of the Egyptians themselves actually rewriting parts of their own history by looking at engineering and technological aspects of the mysteries that are in Egypt. Phenomenal dude. Thank you so much for the $10, Ahmed. Great to see you too, mate. Ahmed Adley, who is
So far,
Ahmed
so it
posted
gives
the super chat.
you have to.
And it's
pick
just
a
looking
point.
at that spot here. Right,
so just
okay.
for that spot. So there is no unusual metals there at that spot. It doesn't mean
Right.
they're not anywhere. So we'll just have to look.
So yeah, see these same returns. So we typically on the stone.
And of course, we'll zoom in. I just
Yeah.
I just want to find a little bit better spot.
Yeah, we're at a very high level here.
We'll zoom in on it a little bit. Yeah, now we can see it. It's just when you look from the top because there are no shadows.
Yeah.
But now we sort of know this is through and this is a ridge, another through, another ridge, right?
Yep.
So how about we zoom in here a little bit? Pretty focused.
See, and adjust the focus.
See, we are looking for things like this,
Yeah.
So
Oh,
let's
I
see
see.
what the hell is
This
that.
is like an embedded piece of stone, or we don't know what. Just something looks like it's in the material.
Is this anything unusual? And sure enough, this seems to be something else. It seems to have tungsten in it.
Tungsten.
It's not, just spoiler alert, it's not tungsten. But so it's not tungsten, but you see the system is guessing, like the software is trying to guess what material it is based on those returns. But we did find some metals. It wasn't tungsten in this case, and we go through the process of how we eliminate it, right?
Okay. Let me make sure. So I'm gonna do this. These KLM markers correspond to spectral lines of different elements. So this is tungsten. Yeah, I don't think it's a particular level.
So you see this. So you see these blue lines. So he hits tungsten in the periodic table, and if you were going to get, if you hit tungsten, you would see peaks on these blue lines, right? So we're not seeing peaks on all those blue lines. It's not tungsten.
Good match for tungsten. Let me see.
Although I was fascinated. I mean, we were like tungsten. Like, that's cool.
Silicon. Yeah, so that's a line for silicon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is this? Let's see. I bet this is aluminum, right?
So we get these peaks. These taller peaks are what you typically see for all of this stone. Okay, so this is the ceramic or the stone material. Elementally, you're going to see silicon, aluminum, calcium, a little bit of oxygen maybe. So that's generally the
Quote
atomic
zero, where are my
composition of these
quotes?
types of rock. With the
Where did my
quartz sample,
quotes
it's
go?
essentially
No, you can't be
what is it, silica
serious.
dioxide or whatever. It's you will see a lot of silicon, and that's what we
Oh,
saw
thank
when we put
God.
that quartz sample in there, which is exactly what you should see.
Is this Eric's? No, this is
You
Toad's
even had- I hope I
Volcaroo.
pronounced your name right, mate.
We gotta hear it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, brother. Great content.
You're a
Always.
gentleman and a
Thanks so much
scholar.
for the super chat. It's greatly appreciated. Cheers. Very generous.
Okay, so what is this? Let's see. It says calcium, tungsten, sulfur, bismuth. No bismuth, how about sulfur? Well, there is a little bit of sulfur, but sulfur is probably part of the.
Yeah.
Stone. And what's the CL?
Okay, so this is calcium. So this is not particularly unusual.
Yeah, that's probably the rock, right?
And chlorine, could be just.
So, aluminum, silicon, calcium. Get used to seeing that. That's the base return for most of these types of stone. That's the elemental composition of hard stone like granite. You'll see a mixture of it. You do also get proportions of it essentially shown over here. This graph isn't linear, so it's not really like a linear. You can't, like, a high peak doesn't necessarily always mean like if this peak's higher than this peak, it means there's more of this than this. That's not really the way it works. This is kind of giving you a bit more of an idea about composition of the materials in the sample, at least as far as I think that it works.
Part of. So that's.
So where's the tungsten? So it came back down again. It started out. with a
Well,
bit
I
of
mean, the
tungsten, now
software
it's
is
stuff
trying to make sense of these peaks, and I'm challenging its conclusion, right? So I see the tungsten disappeared, and if I look for the tungsten line here, where is
That'll
it?
be-
Here. It doesn't match anything, right? So there isn't
Oh,
a
it's
line
over here. Okay.
or
Yeah.
these two lines. And this match better to silicon, right?
Yep.
So that's why I don't think there was tungsten in that spot. But let's look somewhere else. What about this?
No, we haven't got to titanium yet. We will be getting to titanium
So we still have some
soon,
other
because the
things.
titanium is probably the most interesting part of what we found. So save that for the end. But we did find interesting stuff on these other samples too.
Aluminum is just.
Yeah, aluminum is common, you wouldn't be surprised. Because it's a part of very many minerals.
Minerals.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Lotus flower, blue lotus, I think, which is the thing that contains DMT. That certainly seems to be part of ancient Egyptian culture. I believe it has it. I don't know. Some people say it hasn't.
Okay, so this might be better. I was waiting for this to come up. This is a different detector that gives.
Bo with the $20, who's also an Uncharted X channel member. Thank you so much, man, for being a member and for the $20.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
sir.
Ben. Screw
You're a
mainstream
gentleman
archaeology.
and a scholar.
Yeah, I tend to have to agree. One of those for them, because it feels like this is not work that I should necessarily be doing. Seems like something that those guys should be doing. And look, maybe it has been done. I don't know. And this is the other thing. As far as I can tell, I think it's possible that the LAH group, like the Laboratory of Alternative History, the Russian guys, I think they did something like that. I don't know if they used a scanning electron microscope, because all their work's kind of in Russian. It's a little hard to decipher. I heard that they had found some metals in some of these stones as well. I don't know what methods they used. I really know nothing about it. But as far as I know, this as far as I know, I'm not sure this type of thing has been done before, where you're taking these ancient worked pieces of stone and looking at them and looking for evidence of tool marks and metals and in this type of a process. I'm not sure it has been. Maybe it has. I don't know. But I certainly haven't seen a lot of it or anything. I couldn't find anything kind of from the mainstream academic institutions that have access to both this type of gear and these types of samples.
There's brighter spots for places where you tend to have net.
So this is good because this shows you the difference. So now this is the backscatter. This is kind of your primary imaging. This is your backscatter imaging. Does give you with the shadows, and it shows kind of the topology a little better. They're actually also at slightly different angles too. They're not exactly in the same spot and on top of the sample, so you do get a slightly different picture between the two imaging sensors. But this is the backscatter array, so when you see metal under this, it's going to show up very brightly.
Metals.
Right.
So if this is bright, let's see. Yeah, doesn't seem to be anything unusual.
The same thing, right? Calcium, silicon, aluminum, a little bit of sodium,
Yeah, it's chlorine, aluminum, silicate.
Yeah, which
chlorine
is,
as well.
Pretty, because clay is aluminum, right? But
Yeah.
this is not necessarily clay, but then you'll find aluminum.
You find it in everything.
Let's see, what do we get into here?
So usually, so this is a secondary electron detector. And secondary electron meaning when the electron beam hits the surface, it knocks off additional electrons.
Okay.
And this is particularly useful for imaging metals because metals involve a lot of secondary electrons.
Right.
And when you don't know where to look at, if you switch to secondary electron imaging, let's say if you have metal
Dude.
stacks over the ceramic.
I will break for this one. Dan.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman
Thank
and
you
a
so
scholar.
much. $100, man. That's super generous, dude. And Dan has been a long-time supporter of the channel. He's been on tours with me as well. We're good friends. He's one of my mods. That's extremely generous of you, dude. You didn't need to do that. He's also supported the Twitch streams quite a lot. He said, congrats on reaching 500k. Thanks for continuing to put in the work and loving the investigation, dude. Thank you so much, man. Thanks, brother. I really appreciate it. You're awesome. Thanks, mate.
You'll see them as bright spots. But you also see
Very
bright
generous.
spots that are just reflection points.
Right.
Angled. And I don't see anything that looks,
Like metal.
crystal here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, as he's saying, like you do get you get bright spots from metal, you get bright spots from angled bits of stone that reflect electrons, and you can see here. So you also get this nice topography of the sample. So we're seeing right here are these ridges, which are like 1400, 1.4 millimeters across. These are like essentially those tubular drill marks that we're still on the first sample.
Yeah. And are those tool? Do you think those are tool lines? Those ridges that we're looking at, like
Yeah, I think these are two lines. So let's trace this through the sample. Maybe we'll see something interesting.
Something's happening. I think I'm getting follows on
Because
there.
there's the edge, right? Yeah, you can see it much more clearly there.
Sorry, it's also OBS is connected to my Twitch channel, so that's an alert for like Twitch follows, people following my Twitch channel. Just ignore that.
In that secondary.
Seen because this part reflects better into the.
Okay, so let's see here. Let's get into. We looked at the base rock, so we start to and you just so again, I kind of want to emphasize this as well, and it's a comment that Max makes here somewhere, I think, about how clean these samples are.
That.
I mean, it could be in the sand,
Yeah, I think there's a comment he makes here.
You send that to call. Yeah.
Surprisingly clean. I guess I've never seen samples that clean.
There you go. You look after it. Yeah.
I guess were they washed or something? Scrubbed. That.
I mean, it could be in the sand, I don't.
So a lot of these were buried in sand in the bottom of the step pyramid for a long time, getting sand.
So he's commenting on how clean the samples are. Like you would expect to see a bit more than what we're seeing, and it's kind of one of the takeaways that Max was thinking about. One of the reasons that he thought that potentially ultrasonics could have been used, although we did also find some metals which we're about to get into now. And I just want to say thank you to Mathewson Artistry for
Thank
the
you very
$20,
much, sir.
man.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
Will this information give an origin point as to where it was quarried? It could be. I mean, so one of the you could do a comparison of the stone types. Yes. So if you took a sample from a quarry and you compared it under a microscope, you might not need an electron microscope, but you could visually as well. But I think under a microscope and the elemental analysis would help too. that you might be able to match up quarries to specific stones. It's one of the big mysteries about these vessels, right? Because there's literally dozens and dozens of these sort of semi-exotic stone types that have been used to create them. You know, lapis lazuli and tourmaline and all these other things. And you know, for example, the lapis stuff has always been a mystery to me, because we have things like the hollow tubes of lapis that I've seen at least 2 of them that were found in pre-dynastic burials, like you're talking thousands of years before ancient Egypt. And you know, these are like look to be precision machine artifacts. We don't know if that's true because we haven't been able to analyze them. No one's scanned them. They're just literally in museum cases next to bone and bead ornaments and, you know, mud things and pot and very primitive pottery. But there's just, you know, they're found in Egypt, but as far as we know, there's no source for lapis lazuli in Egypt. So it's, you know, Afghanistan, I think, is the closest to Egypt for where lapis might be found. And you have literally dozens of stone types like that where we just don't know where these came from. And it's interesting to me because it's kind of a secondary vector on the whole discussion, in that it almost implies a system of if not global, certainly regional trade that might have been happening way back when, sort of pre-dynastic times, in order for these samples to end up in Egypt, where they've been found. It's something I've mentioned on other live streams, and I will for sure mention it in the upcoming sort of vase video. Is that, you know, Egypt's not the only place that machined and precise artifacts have been found. There's a whole host of them. Is it Versadoco is a good channel that's been looking at some of the artifacts that come out of Turkey. So you have machined obsidian artifacts that are dated in sites back to 10,000 BC, or 9 or 10,000 years ago, certainly like in the Neolithic Stone Age, that are machined, that have lips. They have very similar machining features to what you see in ancient Egyptian artifacts. So it's, you know, it's not like Egypt seems to be the only place for this type of thing. They're also finding artifacts like this in Turkey. But it's like, to me, it's like, I get the feeling that there has to be and you have to remember too, tens of thousands of these things, at least, that we found. I mean, 40 to 50,000 of them found beneath the Step Pyramid alone. And that was only by Jean-Philippe Loyer, who was excavating that place from the 1930s. But it had been excavated for 20 years before his time, in modern times. Like, it had been looted in the past, who knows when, thousands, hundreds of years ago, everywhere in between. But someone else was actually working on that site before Jean-Philippe Loyer got in there and started to document it. And it's his findings that give you those numbers of like 40 to 50,000 hardstone vessels. But we just don't know what happened in the 20 years prior to that. Who knows how many things were taken out of there, or what was found. So there was a lot of them, which implies, you know, there was a lot of stone going around, and a lot of these sort of semi-exotic, you know, difficult to find pieces of stone that are just incredible, with large crystal inclusions and all the rest of it, the beauty in the stone that you see when you go to the Egyptian Museum or you look at these things. Charles X-Man, thank you so much for the super chat, $20.
Thank you very
You
much,
guys
sir.
have been very nice
You're
to me.
a
I appreciate
gentleman
it.
and a scholar.
So, you know, it's a whole other vector on it, right? It's not one I've explored it in great depth, but it's something I've thought a lot about, and I'll be writing about it. I'm trying to write a book as well. So I know I haven't been producing a ton of videos. I mean, these take a lot of time and effort to make, but I am at the same time also trying to write a book. But I'll keep making videos. But yeah, I think there's the Tale of Two Industries thing is pretty much a book at this point.
Yeah, that's inoperability aluminum.
Yeah.
It's silicon.
So we found something else here.
Calcium, I forgot what is this guy.
That's a different. That is a different graph.
Now it's iron is popping up.
Yep.
Now
So,
iron's
so now
popping
we're
up
starting
now.
to see iron. So that's iron. See this? So if you click on Fe, which is iron, the atomic symbol, like the elemental symbol for iron is Fe, ferrous, right? You start to see little peaks on the iron scale, and you actually see it here, right? You've got, it's still saying tungsten. It's not tungsten, but you're seeing ions coming back as a return here, and it's matching the peaks on the spectral kind of wavelength scale that we're seeing.
Is that iron?
Am I on Linux? No, I do have a Linux system, but
That
I'm
looks
not on
like
it.
iron.
Yeah.
That's,
So where's the W? What if you hit the W on the graph? Is it just?
I don't know. I need to look up the spectrum. Maybe there is tungsten. Maybe.
So I don't. It's probably worth investigating some more. This does think it's tungsten. I don't think it matches. There's no peak on this left line. This peak here, I think, is the one that matches silicon as well. But we're missing anything at all out here in this length. And you see iron was, you know, defined by these two peaks here, which is what we're getting.
I need to recalibrate it a little bit
But iron definitely there. If he,
better. Yeah, iron seems to be there, yeah. So that's, I'm pretty sure that's iron.
We're still missing one here.
Is this zircon? That's the question, because that looks like a zircon peak.
a zircon.
Yeah.
That's a.
So we're seeing zircon, right? So iron and zircon in this little bit that he's sampled that's got a different coloration to it. Now, I want to explain this as well because it's an important point, and this is something that people will say. I've already seen it in some of the comments on the short. Obviously, things like iron and titanium exist naturally, right? They exist in stone. In fact, iron is the single most what would you call it, populous element on the planet. Like Earth is primarily iron. It is the most. It's the element that there is the most of on Earth is iron. But it exists in nature. It exists in oxide. So you have iron oxide. You know, that's pretty much the term for it. Titanium also exists in nature as titanium dioxide. So what you expect to see as a return when you find those naturally occurring oxides in stone, which is entirely possible, they could be in the stone, you would need to see a return on the oxygen as well, right? So you want to, if you were going to have an oxide, you need to have titanium and oxygen, or iron and oxygen, and we're not seeing that. So in a lot of these cases, and I'd love to get, for example, a piece of iron oxide and put it under this process and see what that return actually looks like, so you have a basis for comparison. But in general, and particularly as you see when we get to the titanium piece that we found, it's an embedded fragment of something that is returning pure titanium or pure iron, or both. You know, that can be an alloy. If you have multiple metals in something, so for example, bronze is an alloy of tin and copper. You know, all of these types of things. So you'd see those, but in order to get out like raw iron, you have to process and smelt and work on that iron oxide to actually get iron out of it. Same thing with titanium. And titanium's interesting because, I mean, it wasn't really even discovered until the 1700s, and it really wasn't used outside of laboratories until the 1930s, I think, was the start of kind of the industrial application and use of titanium outside of just like a laboratory concept. So it's a relatively recent discovery that we're finding kind of elemental titanium in this that I do not think is in the form of an oxide. It's actually in spots in the rock that look like embedded fragments of something. And I'll show you what contamination looks like too at the end, because at the end we deliberately contaminated a sample with titanium to show you what that would look like. As a little experiment, but we across these other samples we found a bunch of different metals, and it doesn't look anything like at least the contamination that we did deliberately at the end. So there's a lot of context here, and again, these are preliminary results, but it's interesting. So what we're finding here is zircon. So we're finding a little bit of iron and some zircon, Zr. So zirconium, think of like fake diamonds and whatnot. I think Russ mentions it here.
Metal.
Metal.
It's a metal.
Yeah. Zirconium. Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy metal.
Yeah, so we've got zircon and iron in this one
So I
spot.
don't think I've seen this peak before.
Yeah, that third one there is kind of new.
So let me do this.
So now we get to the point where we should have done this before, is like label the peak. So now he's put a ZN on there.
That's interesting because we use tungsten carbide for cutting bits for like extreme industrial.
Yeah.
So I would like to know if it's
Well, iron and zircon.
iron and zircons. Yeah, like that.
And that tungsten's still there again.
So we're still on this same little spot here that
Trying to
shows
say
up.
it's tungsten, but it's
You see, you're getting a lighter reflection of the metals from the backscatter detector.
Yeah,
still have that third
I'm not
peak.
sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not tungsten. It's just I probably need to look up tungsten spectra a little better because it has several peaks,
yeah.
and we don't see any other.
So you're saying there should be peaks here.
Well,
this
very
his-
Yeah, sorry about the ads on the live stream. I can't control that. That's a YouTube thing. I put it on its minimum setting, which is like 1 per hour. So apologies if there are ads.
small ones, you know, if there was that much tungsten, you should see, you know, peaks
Peaks
in
over
here
there
too.
as well.
And this peak, you see, is not visible.
on the edges.
And that's
right.
why I don't think it's tungsten, right?
Okay.
But if
Do I know history for granite, Doug? Yes, we've swapped some emails. I haven't spoken with him, but yeah, maybe we'll do a collab or a chat at some point too. I like his work.
you do aluminum, you know, this peak is explained.
Definitely there.
That peak is explained by silicon, right?
Yep.
But that peak is not explained by anything but zircon. You know, I don't see any other element there,
Yeah.
but zircon is there. And that's definitely iron because...
Yeah,
well,
strong iron response
that's,
here.
That's iron.
In fact, this is primarily iron. You can see here we've got the majority is actually iron. So this is a strong sort of iron, potentially zircon, either alloy or something. I don't know, but it seems to be like a primarily iron area in it. And again, you're not seeing oxygen on this, right? So I don't think this is iron oxide.
Solid iron.
Solid. Yep.
Yeah, so we found a little bit of iron with zircon in it.
Wow.
Yeah, and there are ways around YouTube ads. There's lots of ways around it.
Okay.
And it's a pretty big, it's like 50-50, you know, almost. Iron zircon. So if you, let's say, take natural iron, and you can say it was contaminated by zircon, but you will see like a fraction.
A fraction.
Out here, it's
Like
the same amount as iron.
Right. So it's
Actually, let me get the iron to stick, so we don't have to switch.
Elena Hawk,
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a
Gobsmacked.
scholar.
Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you so much for the super chat, Elena. I appreciate it.
So we'll keep these two for iron. And
So the aliens made some knickknacks with the ancients to play with? Maybe. I'm not saying that, but
so we know
who
what
knows?
the peaks are.
yeah.
so yeah. So now we should have done this before, but eventually we
And that was,
lab silicon.
Silicon.
I'll get that to stick. Yeah.
So now we get labels on them, right? So aluminum, silicon, zircon, calcium, iron. Right, so pretty clear what's in the sample. You're getting some of the rock and some of this. You typically get the rock. I mean, it's going to hit that electron is going to it's going to diffract those X-rays through the rock as well. So you're always going to see some aluminum and silicon as a result of just the base material. That if there's a piece of metal in, that it's in. Diamond the Day from Oppenheimer Ranch. I have not. No.
Well, you'd expect, you know, pieces of metal to be brighter, significantly brighter.
All right, let's see where we go from here, because this wasn't the only thing we found. Let's see what else.
Like brilliantly white.
Right.
That's how
Okay, so standard rock returns. We've kind of explained that. So one thing I wanted to show you here as we go into it is the other part of this. We'll come back to the metals here in a second, but this was interesting just because you can see at a high level of well, not a high level magnification, but on this sample, you can see those machining marks, right? So this is all probably the polishing marks on the stone under magnification, and they're pretty much all similar. Like the tool marks, when you compare this to like modern cutting methods, and we did the little copper bar that we looked at the end was very jagged relative to any of this work. Felt smooth to the touch, but under a microscope like this, it looks super jagged. This is very fine and precise work under a microscope. You see similar things over here, right? So you can see these marks. There might be scratches or in it, and I think even polishing and machining, you're going to get lines that come at different angles, but most of these seem to be pretty much all done in a similar angle. Looks like there's a scratch here as well. But yeah, this is all pretty clean, you know. And these surfaces, when you touch them, and if you ever come to Egypt on our tours, particularly the one in March, we always do go down beneath the step pyramid, where there are literally hundreds of these types of pieces laying around that you can pick up and handle, and you can actually touch them, because there's very few vessels and vases that you can actually touch in museums. There's some real big ones that you can put your hands on. They don't like it when you do that, but you can do it. But most of the other ones, the really nice ones, are always behind glass, or they're in cabinets. You can't touch them. But you can, beneath the step pyramid, there's some large fragments of stone vessels, and you can get a sense of just how smooth and amazing the surfaces of these things are. It's hard to describe. They're incredibly well made. So NJJ, man, thank you so much for the $5, and also Cos Billingham for the 10. At this point, I'm surprised you didn't see a nanoscale hallmark from a manufacturer. Yeah, we were looking for it. We were looking for it. Didn't see it this time. This, and to be fair too, this is very much a needle in a haystack exercise, right? There's so much space to cover. You're looking at this micron level scale on pieces that are this big. That's a lot of microns, and you're just sort of casting about. And we didn't have time to do a systematic sort of search. You could, put that thing in there, stick it down, and then systematically do a grid search across the whole surface of it. It would take hours and hours, and I mean that's the type of thing I'd love to see done over time, potentially. But this was very much a casting about. Let's try and find the tool marks, try and find something interesting, zoom in on this, zoom in on that, see how it goes. So, that's the nature of what we could get done in a couple of days. But obviously, that's again emphasis on preliminary, right? This is very preliminary work. I think it's very interesting, and it's indicative of the need to do more work and more follow up and more comparative work. So looking at other samples and things like that.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a
Joan
scholar.
Berkowitz, Alabama Wyatt, thanks so much for the super chats. Joan for the $10, much appreciated, and Alabama for the 2. Might be work by interdimensional beings. Who knows? Yeah, not a theory I generally go with, but I don't know. I'm open-minded. I can't rule it out. I think it's explained by technology, but
This is definitely a piece of tin.
so on another sample we found a piece of tin, and you can quite clearly see it lit up. Like, so in that backscatter array you see this piece of metal, and you see this very strong tin return.
Came from,
And no copper, huh? Because what is it? Because it's copper and tin is bronze, yeah?
no copper though, yeah.
Yeah, no copper.
Thank you very much,
Cost
sir.
Billingham, man, thank you for the
You're a
10.
gentleman and a scholar.
And Nicholas, thank you for the 5,
Stuff
dude.
is pure tin,
Yeah.
and everything else is just artifacts or.
So you can see how clean this return is, right? It is just pure tin, like just straight SM. There's very little other elements in it. See this strong peak of tin here. And again, tin has to be refined. It's pure tin. It's not bronze. You would see, if it was bronze, you'd see copper in it. And again, we saw 0 copper anywhere, nothing, nada, like not a speck. But we found like what looks like a piece of tin potentially embedded in it. Could it be contamination? I don't know how tin would get into this thing. But it's a piece of tin, and it wasn't the only one that we found. So,
So, I think it's remarkable to know that we found a piece of pure tin.
Yeah.
And it's about a few microns.
It's only a couple, yeah, barely.
But it's
70 microns is right for about a human hair. Yeah,
so this
which
is
is like
definitely more interesting.
between 2 and 3 thousandths of an inch. So yeah, we're finding another tin piece here.
Yeah,
It is, it's tin. Yeah.
So we found another tin piece here.
That's that peak to the left
Yeah,
of
that's
calcium.
You see SN coming up.
So could it be?
It's not
How big
bronze,
is the
you
spec?
see
Well,
copper.
we can see the spec. So this is quite zoomed in. So this line represents 190 microns, right? So that's 0.19 of a millimeter. So it's like a fifth of a millimeter across this line. So you might be looking at something that's maybe 3 or 4 microns wide. I'd guess maybe not even that much, maybe more. Yeah, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 microns. So, pretty small. And that's the type of thing that you can see with this examination. Those are the types of things you'd expect to see, because we're looking inside a tool mark here. So if tin's involved in any metal that's been used to scrape this out, it's those tiny fragments of metal and of material that gets embedded in the surface of the stone, right? Because the surface at that microscopic level is going to vary in hardness, right? In granites like hornblende, mica, silica, all these different components that make up this conglomerate material that we call granite. And as you machine that out, not everything is always at that microscopic level going to get cut cleanly, and you might have little things that get, little pieces that get torn out inside the cut, and then that, on the next pass or whenever, this tool's going to scrape off a little bit of metal and shove it in there. Those are the types of things that you can look for with this procedure, and that's kind of what we're looking for here.
Calcium.
So very small.
So could it be?
It's not bronze, and then you see copper.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, like tin is a component of bronze.
Yeah, but no copper.
Right.
That's strong tin.
So could chemicals have been used? That's another good question. It's possible. So you know, another possibility here is that these were used to hold stuff somehow. That I don't know how you get metals in there out of chemicals that would end up embedded in the stone like this. There's a lot of possibilities for what this could mean. That's why I keep emphasizing that this is preliminary. It's tough to draw like a solid conclusion from it. I think you'll find the titanium thing pretty interesting. We certainly did. We're getting to that, and we're getting there. Like we've got another little bit of footage to go here yet, but let's see. On overall, we're more than halfway here, so we've just got to go through this last bit here, and we'll get to the titanium. But so far we've got zircon, we've got iron, we've got tin.
So what's that peak to the right of? There's another peak in there too.
Could this detect diamond dust? Yes, it could. I mean that.
Is this because
You'd see it. It's carbon.
made your dot smaller?
I made my dot smaller. Okay, so this is 10. Okay.
There's another peak there.
Yeah, let's see what that is. Aluminum.
Copper.
No, that's not copper. Chlorine. That's
So it's chlorine. Chlorine. So we see iron, tin, and chlorine, and then if we move forward to this next little dot that we found that we looked at,
It's iron, but iron what?
we're seeing iron, and we're also seeing something else, like this peak down over here. And just to cut the video short a little bit, it's actually fluorine. So this could have been a chemical like this. It could have been, I think it's called ferrous fluoride. Is the combination of iron and fluorine. Can be called ferrous fluoride. I'm not sure if it's specifically a chemical or not, but we're definitely getting iron and fluorine back here. But we saw iron in a few other spots. We saw it directly. We also saw it mixed with other metallic returns like titanium, which we'll get to. And
Thank you very much, sir.
Puka
You're a
Rabbit, man,
gentleman
thank you
and a
for the 10
scholar.
bucks. Appreciate it.
Fluoride.
Fluorine, fluoride.
Yeah, that's fluoride. That peak.
Yeah, I mean that's consistent with fluoride. Yeah. It's definitely a piece of iron. Right there. Shame it's not iron oxide.
Tin could be from the spoon.
Yeah. So it's iron fluoride.
Write a paper for peer review. You know, that's actually I've discussed that with Max. I think it needs more research, but it's certainly I think applicable. Because the nice thing about a scientific paper is you just don't draw any conclusions, right? It's you don't have to draw conclusions from it. You could write a paper that says we examined these fragments under a scanning electron microscope, and this is what we found. This is the methodology. This is what we found. You can put it into some context, but and just your own conclusion would be that this is really interesting in terms of potential, observations around how these things could have been made in the first place. But you don't have to draw specific hard conclusions, and assuming that the process and everything is lines up, and you'd have to deal with provenance, and you'd have to deal with sample contamination, all that sort of thing. That the possibilities, right? And if it goes into peer review, it'd be an interesting paper, because maybe that would stir up the academics to look at it. I don't know. Fluorine is an element. Fluoride is the fluorine. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I do have like Rockhopper as one of my patrons, who's a geologist who's right into this stuff. As part of the produced video, that's going to obviously be a bit more research than me just spouting off after, a week or so after we did the work. I'm gonna get a few more expert opinions, talk to a few more people, because obviously I'm not an expert on electron microscopes. I'm not a geologist or a chemist, so I do want to get more research and talk to more people so I can put something that's a bit more informed out there. But I thought this was a fun sort of exercise to share with you guys, kind of the results of what we got. Look at the raw data. And again, emphasize that it's preliminary. It's tough to draw conclusions from it, but we sure as hell found some interesting things.
Okay.
That sounds pretty technological to me.
Yeah. We got tin chloride and iron fluoride.
And then we found something else here as well.
Mercury or lead?
ZN. Zinc. We found a piece of zinc in it, and it's really strong zinc return.
Not lead. Zinc.
Zinc.
All right, that's interesting. Zinc. What the hell is zinc?
And now it's again like
Yeah.
Yeah, so Russ is like batteries. If it's zinc, it's like...
So you found that this is so you see the sample is a lot more interesting. And this also seems to be wedged in this.
Yeah, it does seem to be.
So yeah, it's again, as Max is saying, like this isn't like a bit of dust, and I'll show you what dust looks like contamination and dust of particles. Again, like I said, we did do that deliberately to look at it, and you know this is not what that looks like, and I'll show you that at the end. But yeah, so this is like a wedged-in piece of what seems to be zinc. Daryl Brook. I'll stop for the red ones. Holy crap. Daryl Brook, $100. Love your work, Ben. Keep up the progress.
Thank you
Darryl,
very much, sir.
thank you so much.
You're a gentleman and a
That's
scholar.
really generous, dude. You guys have been super nice to me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. The sport means a lot to me too. I very much appreciate it. Maybe, yeah. I'm not in getting my own scanning electron microscope territory, but you guys make it possible for me to actually do this work. So thank you.
That's a piece of zinc with some sodium.
And to be fair, not to harp on the support thing, I very much appreciate it because, look, the channel hit 500k, that's great, but let's face it, this is super niche, right? This is never going to be, you know, the millions and millions of views that whoever's talking about whatever happened on social media or just doing reaction content based on the latest Twitter spat or whatever. Those types of views that get it, right? You've got to be kind of down this rabbit hole to click on an hour-long video talking about ancient Hearthstone vases, so... given that it's quite niche, I definitely rely on the support as well for that. So thank you so much, guys, for the people that are supporting and all the channel members, everybody else on Patreon, etc.
But it tells you zinc, so it's primarily zinc. It's just, you know, these peaks won't be as pronounced as these ones because, you know, it's not linear. So this is a pretty good,
I'm pretty sure it comes from Monty Python, that sound clip. I'm not sure. I have this one. Maybe you prefer this one. This one's...
Thank you, Tracy. You've got sharp eyes and beautiful earlobes.
reliable
example.
indicator.
Yeah.
It tells you it's zinc.
So we got zinc. Whoops. Nope. Let's get back to this. All right, so now we get to the interesting part with titanium. So we're on to the last sample, and in fact, this popped up in the last sample. So you can see here a really strong titanium return. This is titanium, but I'll show you the sample in the bit that we're talking about. We found it in a few spots, but there was one piece in particular that held our interest for quite some time.
Yeah, we kind of lost it somewhere.
Spot.
Uh-oh.
Definitely getting some titanium on this one.
I'll try again. That's one here.
So we see iron and titanium, I think, in this.
Yeah, I think it's that spec.
That spot there.
That's spec, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely it.
But it's
And this is iron.
And iron. So it's
Yeah, this is
titanium and
iron.
iron.
Iron and titanium. There's the spot.
So he's looking at this little spot over here. And again, we're at 600 microns with this yellow bar. This thing here is what's interesting, right? See how it's a different color? It's lighting up as a different color. So we're finding titanium in this area, titanium and iron. But this little thing here is what we end up zoning in on. And this proves to be very interesting. And it's a larger little thing it's definitely not contamination. Like, this is embedded
Well, that's
in
the
the
stage.
rock.
Yeah, I mean that's just the camera staging.
Yeah, I can zoom in on that guy and see if we can take a better look.
Yeah, let's do that. We lose it.
Yeah, I think
Cosman, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're
for
a
the
gentleman
tenor,
and a scholar.
It seems somewhat ironic that even interest in the truth of our history is pretty far down the rabbit hole niche. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Not everyone's interested in pyramids, man, but I certainly find it fascinating, and I'm glad you guys do as well. I have beautiful earlobes. You can't see my earlobes; they're hidden. You don't know what my earlobes look like. Well, maybe you do. Did you just watch the core or something, Craig? The unobtainium? Isn't that the material that that dude in the core made that ship out of? Called it unobtainium.
I think this is iron chip.
Yeah, that's iron.
So then he clicks on this thing. There
Oh,
it
this
is.
is the thing. Oh wow, it seems like a smudge. That's actually good.
Yeah, YouTube definitely takes their cut of everything, but it is what it is. So this is further zoomed in. So again, now we're getting down there like 200 microns, 0.2 of a millimeter. So it's this thing here, which has an interesting shape to it, right? I mean, Russ looked at it and said, it's almost like it's square with a chunk missing out of it, almost like it's a tiny little tooltip of something that's been embedded in the stone with a hole in the center. And you see it's got that different coloration to the other rock around it, like it's a brighter white than the grey around it. And this is titanium. So, and this is not like contamination. This is something that's in the rock, and it's probably, you're going to hear us talk about it, that it's bigger than, it's like 40 or 50 microns. I think it's more like 15 to 20, because this is, and if this is 200 microns, maybe it is 30 or 40 microns, that length. So this width here on this line, let's say it's about there. So yeah, maybe it's a 30 to 40 microns wide. So, you know, reasonably sized piece. And you'll see us zoom
50
in on it.
microns across. Yeah, I'll do that too. We found a spot.
Try to get a better picture.
The whole grid's 200 microns, so yeah, it might be micrometers.
Yeah, I got it wrong. It's the
15
yellow line
micrometers
is
across this round thing here, and it's
200.
showing pretty positive.
So yeah, see silicon. So
There
this
you
is
go, first lift.
you see a strong silicon return from the rock, aluminum. You see a tiny bit of oxygen, calcium, but strong titanium return.
Return for titanium.
Show up much on the back together.
So when you do the other imaging, like
Seems to be more like
so on the other imager, without you don't get the same return on the metals. You're seeing it's almost like a raised little bump, something that's sort of jammed in there. And it's only when you look at it with that sort of metal sensitive detector that it shows up a bit differently.
piece of it. Yeah, you cannot make out it like as a separate entity, right?
Yeah.
Right, let me zoom in on it.
Yeah, and cognitive dissonance says it right. Titanium is natural, but not in quantities and not in pure form. It's not natural in its pure form anywhere. It's natural in an oxide called titanium dioxide, and it needs obviously refining to get pure titanium. And we don't, you know, we don't get. This is the piece here.
It is funny looking for sure.
Yeah, silicon is the rock itself, like the silica. That's a major component of the stone.
So we can pick up some details.
Yeah.
It's almost like these little. It's like something's in there and it's been shaved off, or it's knocked down. It's a strange little piece.
Yeah, so according to this, main component is titanium.
Yeah.
Competes with calcium.
So if you click in the middle with that little hole, you see, okay, there's not a lot of return, but mostly silicon, which means it's just rock in the middle.
So the white material looks like it's the metal.
Yeah. So the white seems to be.
That's a very good question, Joseph Renner. Does the spot go through the entire artifact, or is it only on the surface level? It's only on the surface level. So what you see is very much on the surface level. Now I don't have the footage from it, but I did. So it's, you know, obviously these fragments are broken. So at one point I did get one of the fragments. We put it in edge up, so the broken edge up, and I looked at the edge. I was looking to see, you know, because it's one of those theories that comes out of the Serapeum and some other places, the possibility of some sort of liquid or something transforming the surface of the granite to give it that smooth and shiny finished appearance, to see if we could see any evidence for that. And I didn't see anything, at least on the one piece we looked at edge on. It was tough to get any elemental returns from that just because of the angles of the stone. But at least under a microscope it didn't look like anything other than just stone that was broken. But all of this, again, you're pretty much just getting the surface with this elemental composition. And that's also a benefit of having broken pieces, because you can look at both sides of it. You can essentially look at the inside and the outside of, say, a vase or a plate or a vessel. You can flip the sample over. And we generally didn't do that. We were looking at the inside mostly. I think on a couple we looked at the outside. one of the samples looked like it had a crack in it that had been repaired, and we looked at that crack, and it's actually a natural crack that was in the stone. There's nothing in there that's repaired it. It's just there was a crack in the stone, and they just somehow machined the damn thing anyway. Like it didn't break on that crack. So that was actually pretty impressive. And again, these little topics I'll touch on in the video that I'm going to make about it, but it's not stuff that I really have prepared here. We're mostly looking at sort of what we found in the stone.
Or titanium is. So this is. That's a piece of titanium right there.
And there's iron coming back there too.
And iron.
So we found titanium and iron in those spots around it.
Titanium and iron.
Where is that? Where did you put this thing? That little thing down there. Right. How about that one up high there, like here?
Yeah, I'll try that too. Waiting for you to get a little bit better. Picture. Okay, let's look at this. Seems to be not much of anything.
A little bit of titanium.
A little bit, yeah.
So there's a good image. Titanium, iron. You see here, this is primarily an iron with titanium sample. Potentially an alloy, who knows? But you're getting the return of both of those back here. So let's see. Titanium and iron inside of, and we're looking inside of tool marks on this one. So we have, we're inside a groove on a tool mark here.
This is looking inside one of the scratches, the machining marks that's on this little piece.
I didn't see any nitrogen.
So deep in the scratch, we're getting lots of little spots of titanium and iron.
Exotic metals? What's an exotic metal?
Returns.
Yeah, like this one is iron.
This one's
Like
iron.
plutonium or something? I'm glad we didn't find any plutonium.
Which is interesting.
Uranium.
Yeah,
And this
the
is
bulk doesn't have, the bulk is say aluminum and silicon. Right?
yeah. So the bulk is this. Yeah, right. This is the actual rock. This is the mineral. But
So yeah, like I said, this is the actual rock that you get. A little bit of oxygen, aluminum, silicon, calcium. That's what you see on just on the stone. But in these other little specks and fragments, we're getting iron and titanium.
yeah, right. This is the actual rock. This is the mineral. But inside the scratch, this might be.
If there was an element that didn't correspond to anything on the periodic table of elements, I don't know if we'd even see it. We'd certainly find a peak that we couldn't match to a symbol. That would be something else. But you know, given that they pretty much do the count with the protons, you know, all the way up, I'm pretty sure we've got most of that map. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure there could be elements out there with. I guess it's got to be more protons than what we have, because it's like, you know, what's one hydrogen, two nitrogen, something like that. It's not nitrogen. What's it, two oxygen? So it's like light to heavy, and then you can create these like, you know, larger like particle accelerators can create other like other metals that have much higher density of protons that only exist for a fraction of time, that type of thing.
Who knows? It might.
Max is in the chat. My conclusion is that piece was not machined like we are machining things. Yeah, so Max is in the chat. Hi, Max. Good to see you, man. And Max, I'm going to talk to Max. He's going to be, we're going to record some conversation for the video. But and this is something we talked about it earlier. But Max was saying that these pieces weren't machined like we machine things, and we talked quite a bit about the possibility of something like ultrasonics doing it. Because as I said, the real key takeaway here is were just how clean the samples were generally. Although in a few spots over the couple of days we spent doing this, we found little specks of metals here and there. Mostly they were just really kind of remarkably clean. So it's possible they were machined with a different process altogether. And the other key takeaway was no copper for me. And then we found, you know, some interesting metals and things that certainly bear further investigation.
The remnants of whatever might have been used to make it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mostly iron and titanium. Yeah, I'd say about 50-50.
What about that little round
Fluorine, plus fluorine. Yeah.
fluoride or fluorine?
Fluorine.
Fluorine, yes. That's maybe
Fine. Ferrous fluoride, whatever they call it.
yeah.
What about the round thing?
Okay, so without dragging this out too much further, we found more of the same. And then let's see, what is this? This is the little the iron bit that's close up of the bit that we saw with iron and titanium. Again, this is not, this is something that seems either wedged in the stone or otherwise. I'm not sure.
Yeah, almost like it's sticking up.
Yeah. But maybe you're right. The backscatter just has a slightly different angle.
Yeah,
it's like
so it's creating its own shadow.
Yeah.
So, we ended, and then we had to end it after we let Russ drive the electron microscope because he just created a black hole and the experiment was over after that.
Russ is in control of the scanning electron microscope.
Now the science is really going to get done.
Yes. I feel like a black hole is incoming or something.
Okay.
It's aluminum.
Okay, so that's pretty much most of what we found. So it was zircon, tin, zinc, iron, and titanium across those samples that we looked at in the first place. Now, as I said, we also did deliberately contaminate a piece. Actually, let me just do one of these. So we deliberately contaminated a piece with some titanium, and this is basically showing you what that looks like. So this is like titanium dust, essentially, on a piece.
They will just touch them slightly and they'll just...
You see, it looks completely different to the embedded fragments that we were seeing.
Yeah.
Probably don't need the audio so much here. So it looks completely different, right? So then once you hit on it, you get a titanium return, and it's just titanium because it's a big enough piece of dust where it's not hitting the surrounding material at all. So you can see what happens when you actually contaminate a piece. And so I think that looks differently to the piece that we were just looking at, that's 15 to 30 microns embedded in the stone. And this is, again, sort of part of the comparison work that I think if we're going to keep going down this path, we need to do more comparison to other things like stuff that's been machined with modern materials and modern tools, and then stuff that's worked by hand and that type of thing. So, yeah. And there's a piece of there's like a zoom in on a piece of just titanium dust. It's very clear, and it's different to sort of the other samples that we were looking at, is what I'd say. Cool. All right. Well, how long have we been going for? I don't even know. What's the time? So it was like an hour and 40 minutes. So I think we got through most of the findings from this. As I said, I'm working on a more produced sort of deep dive into these results. I think it's a starting point for what we need to go do. I think it's an interesting point. I'd love to see other people engage in this type of research as well. I'll cover these points as well as a lot more in that video when we get into it. Obviously, it'll be a bit more researched and scripted, but I hope you guys found that interesting, at least. I know there's some people in here who use SEM and X-ray analysis for 40 years. You obviously don't understand the level of working out here. Okay, there's a conversation going on in chat. Fair enough. Random. Yep. Sorry. Well, so the replay for this will be available on my channel. It'll be up there, so you can check it out. But I do want to just say a massive thank you to everybody for tuning in today. A huge thank you to everyone who supported the stream, all of the super chats. It means a tremendous amount to me. David, okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
You are indeed.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
A gentleman and a scholar, my friend. Thank you so much for the $10 at the end here. Any evidence of sonic manipulation of material? Do you know of any current action? So if you're talking about things like ultrasonics, I mean, that's what one of the things Max suggested was a possibility that it could have been ultrasonics. And after all, his PhD and his work is in cavitation and ultrasonics and things like that. We talked about that up at the front. Bob G, man, thank you so much for the $10 as
Thank
well.
you, Tracy.
Awesome.
You've got sharp eyes and beautiful
So in terms of channel news and what's coming up,
earlobes.
I am working on a video. I'm nearly done with it. That is dealing with a lot of new discoveries that have been made at Abu Sia. Super interesting. They've done a lot of work digging up on that site. I want to share some of those with everyone. Then I'll be doing this video, basically looking at the scanning electron microscope work. I've got a Serapeum video in the works. It's been a few years since we've looked at that site, and I've certainly got a lot more footage and a lot more observations that I've made there. And also another vase video. So, like I said, Matt has been scanning many more vases. We've got a lot more results to talk about, a lot more vases to look at. There is progress slowly happening with, Egyptian museums and Egyptian universities, for that matter, to do vase scanning and analysis over in Egypt, and there's some updates there, which will be really interesting. Kristen Morlock, thank you so much for the $10 as well.
Thank you very much, sir.
So I've got a lot on my plate coming up, and a reminder to anyone that if you want to come and see some of these things for yourself, or see these sites with me and Kyle and Russ from the Snake Bros and Yusuf, we're running a tour. We're only going to do one for next year, and that is in March. And if you're interested in that, check it out on my website, it's unchartedx.com. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch you all in the next one. I'll take a look at some of the chat questions. I know I missed a lot of them. My apologies for that. Last one I'll get here is, what content was found inside the thousands of vases? Not a lot. They might have found some evidence at some point for residues for things like oils or perfumes, but I think one of the explanations for that is that I do believe these things were used as vases by the dynastic Egyptians. I'm not sure they were ever made for that purpose in the first place, and that wasn't their original intention, but I'm confident that the dynastic Egyptians, assuming they inherited them and they found them, they would have used them as that. Not all of them work as vases. Some of them have pointy ends. They can't stand up on their own, things like that. There's a lot of nuance in that, and it's a topic I do get into in my vase videos. So, if you guys are interested in any of that, do check out the back catalogue. There's a whole lot of content talking about these hardstone vessels and Saqqara and all those things, the areas where they were found. You can check it out on my channel or on my website. All my stuff's on my website, unchartedx.com. So, thank you guys. Take it easy, and we'll catch you in the next stream. Hopefully I'll do another one in the near future here. And otherwise, look out for new videos. Stay sub to the channel. Have a good day. Cheers. Press this button. Welcome back to Uncharted X. My name is Ben, and this is the Uncharted X podcast. In today's show, we're doing something a little different. I am doing a podcast, or something of a swapcast, with a couple of friends of mine, Kyle and Russ from the Brothers of the Serpent. They have their own excellent podcast. Check it out on Spotify or Apple iTunes. They also are hosts on Randall Carlson's Cosmographia podcast. In this show, we're taking an in-depth tour of the Serapeum of Saqqara. If you haven't heard of this site, it is my favorite site in all of Egypt. It's just an incredible underground series of galleries and alcoves, and it houses 24 of the just most massive precision-carved granite boxes that you've ever seen. It's just enigmatic, it's profound, and it's just one of the biggest mysteries in all of Egypt, in my opinion. The Snake Bros and I are going to do a whole series of these little types of podcasts. We're going to try and do them fairly regularly. We're going to go through my raw video footage we're going to pick certain sites and just go through them in some detail, and they can ask questions. They haven't seen them in person. They've done lots of research on them. So it's a good way to kind of do an informal tour around a lot of these sites. The Serapeum really is an epic place, and you're seeing some of the footage from my most recent visit there, but I've visited the site on several occasions, and in this podcast we're looking at the footage from an earlier visit there that I had in 2016. If you're interested in a few more of the specific details of the Serapeum and why I consider it to be just such a mysterious and amazing site, I do have like a 6-part series on the Serapeum, some of the earlier videos that I made on my channel. I've got a playlist for all of those episodes, and there's a link to it below. I hope you guys enjoy the show with the Snake Brothers. If you like the idea of me doing more podcasts like this with them, please do leave a comment below. I have a lot more content planned for this year, one part of which is my own podcast on iTunes and Spotify and all the regular podcast libraries. I released this last year. There are a few episodes up of the Uncharted X podcast, but I'll be releasing a lot more episodes in the near future. You'll be able to find the audio for most of my videos there, as well as the audio from episodes like this. Now, onto the Serapeum.
All right. This is a special podcast. We got Ben from Uncharted X here, and we've sort of teamed up on this. We're doing a group effort here, and Ben, we've been talking about doing this for a while.
We have, yes.
Doing a podcast together. So this is the first, hopefully, in a series. And what we want to do, like the plan has been Ben has all this footage, all these images of places that Kyle and I have not yet been able to go to, but we've been talking about on our podcast for years. So the idea was let's go through some of these images and some of the footage that Ben has, and we'll just sort of do a mystery science theater kind of thing and talk about it. So Ben, thanks very much, man. And thanks for allowing us to do this as a swapcast. I think it's going to be really good.
I think so too. Yeah, the trick was always like trying to find a home for it. I came on your guys' show a while back now, which was a lot of fun, and then we recently recorded a podcast with Randall on Cosmographia, and then we're like, let's just make this happen because we'd been talking about you coming on my show, so we thought, why don't we just do it together, I guess, and just put it on both the channels and everyone can do it. So for everyone on my channels, Brothers of the Serpent, I'm sure many of you know who they are, and go and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as their podcast. Although I'm in your world now too. I just got my podcast started, so I've got a few episodes.
Oh yeah. How's that going?
RSS. I'm hosting my own RSS file and all that, so it's just another thing I'm trying to stay on top of. I've got a bunch of episodes I need to release. It's just a matter of sitting down and hacking it together and making it happen. But I'll do it.
Yeah.
Regularity could probably help me there.
All right, good, because I'm
looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward to it, because the way I've had to consume most of your content up to now is by audio.
Right.
So you make these amazing documentaries, but I listen to most of this kind of stuff at work. I'm running a machine or whatever, and so I'm like, God, I can hear you talking about these amazing images and these videos, but I'm just listening. So
yeah, and well, that's why I did it, because I've got that feedback from a bunch of people. They're like, "Wow, I listen to your videos in the car or while I'm doing something else, and just have it on." So, and tons of people are like, "Do you have MP3s of these?" So, yes, that's the idea, and I think I say that in the podcast. I'm like, I'm gonna just. Because the interviews and podcasts I've done with people are the ones I've mostly released so far, but yeah, I'm gonna go through all my videos and release them all as just podcast episodes and tell people like, hey, there's a video that goes along with it if you wanna hear it.
Yeah,
I'll get it. Just artwork and RSS. That's the trick, right?
Yeah.
And you guys have the same artwork. I'm trying to do episodal artwork. Yeah, pain in the butt.
Yeah. Well, we have been shifting over to the episode artwork. So, got to embed it in the file. And, we have this policy of like as little work as possible, which is the opposite of your policy, which is like you do tons of work.
The perfectionist in me it's with the videos. That's what ends up happening. I'm still trying to figure out the right way to get more content out more frequently, but it's not from lack of working on it. I tend to they're all like long productions that are written and then it takes me forever to actually edit the video. So I think I'm still learning a lot of the tools and techniques for doing that. Hopefully I'll get better. I've got plans for this year to be a bit more consistent about, and part of that is doing things like this, I think.
Yes.
And I love the idea of like we're going to do this weekly for a little while. Just go through different sites, hit them, like watch the footage, talk about what we're seeing. I kind of do this a little bit in my live streams as well, and I think it'd be great to have you guys, just have some more people in there to, have a conversation and point out stuff. And I know you guys are interested in a look at a lot of these sites. So, Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
We
That's
picked a
right.
good-
All right.
picked a good
So
one to
what's
start.
the first one we're going to start with the Serapeum, which is you've done many shows on it, and so have we. So let's take a look here.
Indeed, yeah. So I'll just roll this. Hopefully you guys can see it.
Yep.
It's
Looking
all
good.
working. Yes, we've spent a little bit of time trying to set this up. The audio will kick in at some point in a little while, but this is all you see at the top of the Serapeum. You kind of see the step pyramid in the background. So it's a little bit away, but Saqqara itself is massive. You know, it's 7.5 miles long by about 3 miles wide. So it's actually a big site. That's not the Serapeum. That's what I think this is the lesser galleries, which we'll get to. That's the actual entrance to the Serapeum.
Okay.
Down the hill here, and there's actually there's another pyramid. That may be the step pyramid. Actually, I don't know if that was behind me was the step pyramid. That might be another pyramid.
Did there used to be sphinxes?
Yes.
Lining. Okay.
Yeah. So there was an avenue of like 600 sphinxes. So this was clearly an important place in that probably late. It's attributed to the late period. I'm sure it was being used during if not the middle period, definitely the late period. And it was an important place. It hasn't had an avenue of I think 600 sphinxes leading off.
Wow.
That way, behind us.
And so did they take them away before they knew that the Serapeum was there?
I suspect that the dynastics were using it as a ceremonial site, or for whatever they were purpose. They were dedicating the box, or maybe they were just starting to.
Yeah.
I don't know, because there's only the one box that's really been carved into. But those small. I think they were the smaller sphinxes. But I suspect that was done by them. Probably, in my opinion, if you grant that this site's probably older, and that they found it and they renovated it and they reused it, they pulled it into their culture, and I think they probably built the avenue of sphinxes on the outside leading into it. That would be my speculation, at least, because I really do think, and there's so much evidence of renovation in this site that I suspect that's likely what happened, because they did that at a lot of sites. You've got the avenue of sphinxes at Karnak, at Luxor, and they did that on their important sites, and I think they've probably treated this like an important site. It's pretty profound when you go in there. Don't try and get any information about this site on Wikipedia, because they don't mention any of the boxes or even have a picture of it. But
so what do you think? In the video now, we've moved down the entryway, and you guys have gone in the entry.
Yeah, the sound's about to start from my recording. But yeah.
Okay, and the first thing you start to see is, number one, the walls and the ceiling are very rough.
Yep.
And number two, there's all these little alcove things, at least right there at the doorway. Yeah, they kind of are shaped like tombstones, I guess you would say, or little, but they're very shallow. So do you think that they had things set into those? Is there any information about that?
Yeah. So these were small steles. So there would be little offerings. Like these were.
Okay.
These were like little steles that were put in here. I think, again, all dynastic. They've all since been removed, but they would have been little dedications, little things. I think likely what you would have had happen is the priesthood was selling. Whoever controlled the site was selling space. They're probably selling offering space. It's like a sacred site. Go and put your thing in here dedicated to whatever. I mean, I suspect that was what was going on. I haven't really looked into like what's written on the ones, if they found any at all, because I'm sure that most of them were taken. I'm pretty sure Marriott found it pretty much empty. You just had these. These things here. They're probably taken, and But as you go in the entryway, pan left, that's a rose granite lid for a box that's in there around the corner that we'll look at. It has the nubs on it. It actually has a little bit of writing on it too.
Yeah, I see the nubs. Holy crap!
Oh, there's a bunch. Well, on the nubbed boxes, there's a few of them. We'll get to look at them.
They look very South American.
Yeah,
and of course
South American nubs.
I was here with Yusuf. He's the man for this. This was this footage is not from the recent trip to Egypt, although I have footage from that we can look at. But this is from a few years. I think 2016. This trip might have been. Anyway, skip to where it starts. So we went round to the right in this case, which takes you around. In here we go. In here and around the corner. And it's actually not a bad little speech from Yusuf just initially here, because we're looking at the roof, as you said, rough tunneling, but even though it's rough, I mean, once you get into the galleries, they're just they're perfectly straight. Like I do think that the tunnels themselves are quite an engineering feat. Even though they didn't seem to, the builders didn't seem to care. That's why part of it, why it seems to be functional to me, is like, it was functional. They didn't care about how well they looked. The Egyptians, the dynastics, definitely later on came and cased it, and they put limestone tiles all over it.
Yeah, the precision seemed to go into the boxes. The tunnels were just to hold the boxes, and they didn't seem to, they didn't much care. They just needed to get them down underground for whatever reason, right?
That seems to be what it was for, yeah. So this
still an engineering feat, though. Yeah.
Definitely. So this is a sort of demonstration of just how dark it is as you go in around the corner. That we just passed the lid of this box in the hallway.
Oh yeah.
You can hear Yusuf. We turn off the torches here, and I mean, you guys can hear that?
Yep. Yeah, that's pitch black.
Yeah, it's pitch black.
There is nothing to see. Imagine working and cutting in the bedrock and moving with the broken pieces and the dust and everything outside. And what is the source of light that we're going to use? There's nothing but a torch, a flame. Because we call this a torch. It's not, it's electric. I'm talking about it. ولع النور يا باشا.
So he's talking about working on the boxes in almost darkness, using only a torch or a lantern. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the mystery, one of the mysteries here about the Serapeum is that there's no, you don't see any exhaust. Like you go to Dendera, and these big temples that were definitely used in the Greek Roman period that covered in soot, and some of these are like 18, 30, 40 feet high ceilings. Soot, just soot everywhere, because that's the illumination was a flame, and you just don't. You do have it in a couple of the alcoves, like these little alcoves on the side that we were talking about. A few of those, there's clearly where people have put candles, and you can see the soot. It's like a trail just up the top of, but only like this big, But there's nothing like that in this, and they haven't cleaned it. There's just no soot marks in the tunnels.
Yes, we had
I would have walked
lights.
into there. I mean, you would have walked into there.
Yeah, so it's and this is the box in the hallway.
Yeah, so that it almost fills the hallway.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I like to say, I mean, we've built a floor around it. So if you want to, as we go through this, look for the signs of, human renovation, like modern renovation. Like we've claimed the site, we label as a tourist attraction now. And we've built a floor in here, and what I always giggle about is that the fact that there's a floor built around this box.
Right.
Because we weren't moving it any more than I think the dynastic Egyptians were.
That's right. Yeah. I can see it. You're right. The box is inset into a hole in the modern floor.
Yeah. And we just built the wooden floor around it. I mean, the other thing that I about this box, and Yusuf talks about the weight and about how many people. But one thing that I think is interesting too about this is that we haven't lifted it up, and there's no sign. You've got to imagine, if they had found the smallest fragment of wood, as in a sled, because remember the conventional theory about how they moved the blocks like this was on a wooden sled, and there's even sleds in the Egyptian museum, and that they dragged it. There was no, not a lot of. They might have been pry barring it at the end, but there's no, no wheels or pulleys, just like human horsepower is the Egyptian theory. And if they had found the tiniest fragment of wood underneath this thing, they would have decried the sled theory proven out. But they've never found anything underneath this box that was clearly in transit. They've not found any trace of anything like that. It's just sitting on the floor.
And that's a great point, because the box has the box and the lid separate from it has the appearance of like somebody was in the middle of doing this and then they stopped working on it and they never came back. Yeah. So you would imagine that if that is the case, they wouldn't have taken the time. Well, we need that wooden sled. Pick the box up off the sled, take the sled out from under there, and then put the box back down. No, they would have left the sled there, and there would be pieces. So if they've never found any, that's a good indication that there was no sled.
Yeah. Yusuf does a good talk about. I like this little model about how many people it might have taken to move this.
Okay.
Some of them weighs over 70 tons.
So here we go. We talk about the weight of this.
You can't
How many people? We are talking here, the range of these boxes, not less than 50 tons. Some of them weighs over 70 tons. But let's say in the range of 50 tons, 50,000 kilograms. So let's say strong ancient Egyptians were really strong, and each person would drag 200 kilos. Okay,
which is a lot.
that's good. That's also to be functional. So that means 5.
That's 440 pounds, something like that.
5 times 50. So 250. 250. Where are you gonna fit it?
250 really strong.
So yeah, 250 people to pull 50 tons, assuming you're moving, 200 kilos or 440 pounds per person.
Right.
And you just that's the other thing about this site is that you just how are you dragging this thing? And this isn't even the biggest. Like this isn't even close to the biggest one that's in here. And this is the lid for that box.
That also doesn't account for the drag.
Exactly.
Right? That's just the dead weight.
Yeah.
Dead
just
weight.
Being able to, dead weight. You're not having to overcome the friction of the floor and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it puzzles me to this day about how exactly they move them. It just doesn't seem the brute force approach just doesn't seem to work. You can explain it, I think, outside in the sure 50 tons, it's possible. People can do it, and you can make machines. You can make it happen with primitive methodologies, but in tight spaces, I think it starts to become a different conversation. You just got to. I don't know how you can do it, and particularly in the there's literally we'll get into it, but less than a foot of clearance. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so this thing in the back with the nubs, it's set into this part of the wall that looks like the wall there is carved out for it to sit there.
It is. It's an inset. I don't know why. But that's actually the lid for a box. That's almost as if this was in transit at some point too.
And so they just shoved it into that little part of the wall that's like cut out for it to fit under there.
I guess. I don't even know if this has been moved in modern. I don't think we moved it, but yeah, it's been put up on blocks. It's been basically blocked up. Looks like limestone blocks underneath it.
Yeah, and they're really well done.
If you have a forklift, you need to be able to get your forks back under there after you put it down.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's actually a good point. And this thing's sitting on the floor, though. This is the lid from the other box, and this is a good point, too, because we'll get to that. I'm sure we'll get to the question later about the scoop marks. I just want to let Yusuf talk about this, because in the boxes later, you'll see these scoop marks in the granite, and it's important to understand what's going on with those scoop marks and why they're there, and he kind of explains it pretty well here.
Okay.
Melted down, and it's not. Yes. What is happening here, the stone naturally has cracks. And what they are doing is emptying the crack so it doesn't extend and cause damage to the rest of the box. Like in this case, you can see that natural crack is right here. You see? Yes.
Yeah. They're working around the crack. They're working around the floor.
They're emptying it out.
Emptying out
so the piece can be more solid. This is a proof that when they are doing this, they are doing it for function, not decoration.
Yeah. So you guys follow along there? Yeah. It's a...
Yes.
Yeah. It's
I don't know if... this is... drummers have to do this. With cymbals. Like when you're playing the cymbals and they get a little crack in the edge, the idea is you take a drill and you drill the very end of the crack as it's working its way in. You drill a hole and it'll stop it.
Yeah.
And then you can
stops it from
use them
extending. Exactly. Yeah. I haven't cracked any. I did crack some, but they were trashy ones back in the day. I just let them crack. But yeah, that's how you stop a crack. It's also in aircraft maintenance. I think they work the same way. They they'll if they see any cracks, they can repair them or stop them by drilling a clean hole in it.
Yep.
And it just screams like, okay, why? If this is a single-use box that's simply going to be used as a sarcophagus and thrown in a alcove and buried forever, who cares? The crack isn't going to affect it.
Right. It suggests that they are going to be vibrated, right? Because you're expecting that crack to continue. This is what the point is with the cymbal.
Yep.
the cymbal's just sitting in a cave. There's no reason to drill that crack.
Right.
But if you're gonna keep jamming it, you know it's gonna be vibrating and resonating, and
You wanna keep
that
rocking
crack's-
that cymbal.
Yeah, you gotta keep rocking that box, bro.
Yeah.
Cut out this crap.
I like to say that it seems like solidity was important. Like the box had to be solid. It just had to be, you know, rock solid. Like no faults. And in fact, it's an important point because we'll get, and you can actually see a cut in the roof there. I've not actually noticed that before. It's almost like
The other thing that you know, I wonder about this because so this may not be right because they were, you know, these are underground, but cracks also can be elongated in stone by massive changes in temperature. It gets cold and hot, cold and hot. Right. It'll continue to fracture. So it could be that they were expecting it to encounter different environments, but it's weird because again, these are underground. I also think of like water penetration. Has this place been flooded before?
Possibly, yeah. I hear that point a lot. Many people suggest that, oh well, maybe it was flooded and that's how they moved the boxes in here. I don't think so because there is an elevation change over the Serapeum as you come in, and you'd almost have to have scuba gear to get down to the end. The other thing is you just can't float granite. There's not using the cavities that these boxes have.
That's not what I mean, but yeah, I agree with that. I don't mean that they flooded it on purpose.
And it could have been flooded. I get you. Tell me if you see any signs of water damage in here. That's the type of thing I'd like to. I've not heard that. Like significant water damage from repeated rainfall. I guess that would, like an actual flooding. I didn't notice anything like that myself.
If these are, you know, let's go on the full speculation here. If these objects are very ancient, and they're Younger Dryas ancient, then they experienced torrential rainfalls, and this entire place may have been filled with water. And maybe the people who made them knew that, and they made them to be completely sealed. So whatever was in them was completely protected down in these tunnels. You know, I don't know. I mean, trying to figure out what the function is. Like I think that it seems like they act as hermetically sealed safes, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a function. Like they would seal hermetically, and I've heard a lot of people suggest that. What the problem? My only issue with that is not issue, but question mark is if it's purely as like some people say, oh, it's a seed vault, or it's a storage for like that type of thing. But in that case, why the precision again on the inside? Why go? Yeah. Unless that's simply a function of the manufacturing process you have, and this is a point Chris Dunn made to me too. It's like making cars today. Like we make our panel gaps are so much smaller and better in cars today because our manufacturing processes are much more precise. So that's just an effect. Everything we make is kind of much more precise because our machinery and our tools are more precise. Maybe that's what happened here. Maybe they just had the because
like I have a trash, one of those little metal trash cans in my house. It's way more precise than it needs to be. Exactly. Because the manufacturing tools that they use to make it really precise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was going to point out too that another point to digging out the cracks is you want to know how far they go, right? You want to get in and make sure they don't completely go all the way through, or don't go too deep, so that okay, yes, we can still cut the lid out of this thing.
Yeah.
And this crack doesn't go all the way as far as the lid is supposed to go, because if you want it to seal and be protected from water, you would want to find out how deep that thing goes.
Yeah. True. Yeah, and I'd almost think this place had to be underwater at some point, particularly if you go back to that Younger Dryas, because it's, there's that I read the quote when we were talking with Randall, and it's in one of my other videos, but he talks, even Petrie talks about the evidence for the Nile flooding to 200 or 300 feet higher, almost, just an evidence of massive flooding and rainfall. And it would have, and Yusuf also has talked to me about, I have yet to go and film it. I think the next time in Egypt I will. He thinks there's flood damage at the Giza Plateau that he can identify, like up near the Gate of the Crow and a couple other spots, which would be super interesting. So this video,
look at how smooth the top edge of that is.
Yeah, this is one of only a couple. So we passed by it, but the limestone box was behind us. And this, let me just pause it here real quick, because we talk a bunch about this box, because it's one of a couple boxes that actually has writing on it. If you zoom in.
Yeah, I see writing, and then there's these long rectangular marks. What are
Dave,
those?
Yeah, do you think
like
those
a false
are
door? That may be that actually may be original, but it'd be the only box that has it, because I think that false door motif that's in a lot of places is original, and in a lot of cases it is, as you'll find it as well done, you know, polished and just beautiful relative to the writing, and this even in this case the same thing. And on the box down the end, they sort of scratch in. They've imitated it by scratching in a false door on the back of the box.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what those marks are on that other one. Yeah. I've seen
so
those.
on the back, it's
What are the lines?
they've literally drawn like a false door. Like in that video we were watching, the resonance chamber. That shape is what they've drawn on the back of that box.
Oh, okay.
And then so this is where it gets its name. This is the Serapis. We talk about this, and this is the box where the lid near the door is the one that sits on. That was meant for this, I think. One of the bigger, heavier boxes, probably like 70 so tons. This is a huge rose granite box. Only one of two that probably came from Aswan. The rest of the boxes, the quarries are almost unknown. Like we know some of the black granite, some of the Wada Hammamet quarry, which is not on the Nile, which is the eastern desert of Egypt. You've got to actually haul that thing over, I don't know, hundreds of miles of desert and landscape and mountains and valleys. You can't just plop it on a boat in the Nile and float it up here. So, you know, that's the other thing. Like, there's only two boxes in here that are rose granite, that probably came from Aswan. All the other boxes came from other places.
So that looks like prying damage to me on the edges there.
Yeah. And then
but these were all found open, right? So somebody pried them open.
One. Yeah, except for one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
that's very old prying damage.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And it looks like it, right? So the lid's been moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It must have been peeled off and moved at some point.
Yeah.
And the rest of all most of their lids have been shifted off. Or I guess that's the theory, that the lid is for this box.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll skip.
Not actually, no. Well, I guess you could match the stone, right? Because the lids in the boxes were made from the same block.
The same block. That's right. Cut them off the bottom.
And here we have.
Never mind. This is super loud. This is me fighting with my microphone. It's part of the part that don't make the videos. Trying to mic and talk to him and record. So we'll come back this way. We've come in, we've turned left. There's actually a limestone box. The first box we saw, the complete one, is a limestone box. I think there's a chance that is a dynastic box that wasn't finished. And then you have this one, which is kind of the smallest box in here. Also has some scratched in writing on the front.
Oh yeah.
Interesting box. It's circular. It's not square like the others. It's way smaller. This is something very much like a lot of the boxes you see in in the museum. And the other thing is, this is the only box that has this tunnel behind it. It's like in this alcove, but it's like there's a tunnel behind it. And we'll go down there. You can't normally go down there, but you can. In this video, we hop over and. I mean, they light it, or they light some of it. So.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna be super loud.
There is a room in the end of this tunnel. No?
The limbo one.
I think I saw a water bottle in the box in the bottom as well, of course.
Oh, no.
The ubiquitous trash.
Yeah.
And this is the smallest.
I just called him. I stopped in that whole first part. Sorry.
It's me swearing at the camera. Okay. This
so this tunnel's pretty narrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like maybe two people wide max. Yeah.
Yeah, it's smallest tunnel in a very odd sort of space.
You think they were about to house it in this room? Or you think it was already in and they were taking it out? I think it was already in.
You think so?
You see, these are the stones that they used to renovate.
Right.
Yeah.
That they used to renovate.
So there's tons of limestone laying around, and we haven't quite got there yet. There's a lot of
black box.
There was a lot of renovation work. Just the floor tiles. They had wall tiles. You still see a few of the plastered limestone wall tiles, but they built. I think the dynastics came in here and renovated and built floors around the boxes, and we'll see some evidence of that later on.
Yeah, so just to describe for people listening, you guys went around the small box, and there's a tunnel, 50 feet?
Yeah, maybe a little longer. Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the end of it, it turns right, and there's all this rubble, and it kind of ends in a little alcove. And Yusuf is saying that he thinks maybe the box was in the alcove and somebody was trying to get it out.
Yeah.
Is that what he was saying? Yeah.
Yeah, he thinks it was coming out. We don't really know going in, coming out. But it looks like there was a lot of work in here that's all been busted up. Like the granite floors have probably, the limestone floors have since been quarried.
What happened here is in one of the eras, I believe it's the side pillar, they reused the stones, limestone, from outside to case the inside.
So do you?
And this
has
is
anyone
mentioned
excavated that pile?
Have they done that? I don't know if anyone's dug.
I mean, have they got, because
I'm sure they may.
I know I've seen from some of your other stuff that there's like other tunnels in here that they don't know where they go.
Yeah. So actually, we get over here. You can. We're about to go into that area now. We'll go into the closed off area in the next bit here, and then that's right. They in fact. These were areas that they didn't know existed prior to that, and on this recent trip, I talked to some people that are actually working on these sites, and he and I had it on. I mean, it's just a rumor, or it's what this I was told by a guy that pretty high up sort of works on these places, is that they may have found an extension to this, and there may be as many as 20 more boxes.
Oh man!
Oh my God!
But
so yeah, I mean, like, it seems like the first thing you would want to do is to dig up that rubble and see what's in the floor. Like, is there another passageway going somewhere?
I wouldn't be surprised if they've gone through it and that's the pile of it. I don't know. I don't know if anyone has. If you listen here, I think you can hear the sound of the closed door opening. Hear this.
I finally got it. Yeah. All right.
There's the door. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Well, so we'll go through that door after the break.
After the break. How about I figure we go from break? Yeah.
And welcome back to this first edition of hopefully many explorations through Ben's archives and Brothers of the Serpent podcast and Uncharted X. Going through the Serapeum. Is that how you pronounce it?
I say Serapeum.
Okay.
You can say Serapeum.
We've always called it the Serapeum.
Yeah, Serapeum.
Serapis.
But we're always pronouncing stuff wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Serapeum. I have a whole video on how it got its name. Actually, there's a brief because it's a good talk that Yusuf gives about it's kind of got to do with the Greek pronunciation of a lot of stuff. Yeah, Serapis.
Yeah.
And then the apis, the balls. Which is not a theory that I think holds much weight. Which we can talk about as we get into here.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
As we go into the so we came in through that way. Now we're going in through.
For a long time, they thought that the Serapeum ends here, and then one of the professors discovered that it extends.
So this is into so it's not lit. This is an off-limits area normally. I mean, you can get in here. Obviously, they're putting infrastructure in here. It's a smaller set of tunnels, more alcoves. Only one box, and it's at the end, and you can kind of get flashes of it, but we'll get up to it.
They used to fill with plaster and then stick more of the limestone. But this fine type of limestone was actually taken from outside. And then you can see added
That's actually a pretty good
somebody
example
smoothed it.
of one of these alcoves. Let me.
Oh, he's talking about the walls of the tunnel there.
Yeah, he is. So the walls of the tunnels is talking about the fact that you can see where the plaster was put on the walls, and they would stick the other blocks of limestone, and then you have these blocks of limestone at the entrance to these alcoves. You can see at the back wall here where there's a bunch of limestone tiles that have fallen. This is all rubble that's fallen down. A couple things to note, and he was right. This limestone's come in from outside. This is probably all dynastic work of them renovating the site. You can't see it well here, but as we go, particularly into the main gallery with all the boxes, look on the sides of the passage. You'll see these large sort of alcove-shaped, these arched-shaped little alcoves on either side of these big box alcoves. and those used to house granite steles that were shaped like false doors. They had that false door shape on them, and they were facing the box.
And then you can see added symbols. When somebody smooths it, parts like this to add writing or to add or to house.
Yeah, so
okay.
So they would smooth them over, they would plaster them over, and you could then add writing, or they would house a little granite stele or something like that.
Here is a giant false door from granite, and we're gonna realize when we are walking both sides of the boxes, they have empty spaces in the walls.
Yeah.
Probably they housed these false doors.
So there's a I forgot we had this in here actually. Like this is a granite false door. This is from one of those chambers. That may have been from one of the other chambers, but this is all granite, rose granite. This was probably what you would find in all of the other chambers on both sides of the box.
So it's a big granite slab. It's been broken down the middle, but it has this pattern of rectangles cut into it. Each one successively smaller and deeper in.
Yeah.
And it looks like a door. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think that's original work? Is it to the same quality as the boxes?
No, I think it is. I think the false doors. I do think that stuff, those shapes, come to us from the builder culture, in my opinion. Yes, I think so. And you often see it. And then you see it imitated by the dynastic Egyptians as well. Particularly, you'll see it on the big box at the end. It's drawn on a lot of shapes, but it's in a lot of cases the carving of these false doors is to that level of really high quality work that you typically see, and I would generally attribute to some form of higher level of stoneworking. And this is also the important thing here as we get into it. You'll see signs of renovation, like these floor tiles. They've got hieroglyphs on them. It's just
so that big one going across that's an actual tile.
This here, there's probably a number of floor tiles in here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that have been added, and they have glyphs.
Yeah, they're upside down.
They're upside down because it was reused to renovate the site.
Yeah, so the hieroglyphs on this block here in the ground are upside down, and it's just because they've taken limestone from an older site outside, brought it in here, and renovated the site with it.
What?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
During the dynastic.
And in fact, let me mute this and we'll talk about it. And in fact, we know it's Old Kingdom because one of the things that there's some differences in the hieroglyphs themselves that are used to date the period that it was written. So there's certain symbols, like there's a little wavy symbol that they change over time, and you can date the sites in a lot of cases, or date the writing by the symbols that are used for certain words. So there's actually there's blocks with Old Kingdom writing on them in this site, but are in places like that where they're upside down in the floor, not ever meant to be seen, and it tells you that this is most likely a block that's been taken from somewhere else, and reused and put into this site. So, it was renovated by the late period dynastic Egyptians. Yet the site's also attributed to late period dynastic Egyptians. And so here's another example. This is like another empty alcove, but has a much smaller case in it, and it's a smaller room with a smaller indentation in the ground. And I think this is an example of they were probably building. They may have been looking to put a box in here. So again, if you imagine a box was in here, why is there writing on this block that's on the inside lip facing the,
Yeah, because you wouldn't have seen it. Yeah.
So this is a later people's finding their attempt to mimic the other rooms and try to put their own box in here.
I think that the dynastic Egyptians likely added the floors in all of the rooms. My opinion is that they renovated it entirely. I don't think the original builders cared whether there were floor tiles around the boxes or not. I think that all of that limestone work, all of the floors were added later. In my opinion,
So we're looking in the hole here, and you can see where they were cutting into the original limestone, and then above them is clearly tiles.
Yep, floor tiles.
And you're thinking that all those tiles were added by the later people who renovated it, whereas the hole may be original to the original builders.
Maybe, maybe this is an alcove that the dynastics dug out, or they might have dug the hole. It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah,
it's
much smaller than the
small
boxes.
box. Yeah, this is like this is a small box. And you know, when it comes to boxes, we're going to see this the most amazing example of it. You hear my voice here, like, huh.
It's like the largest one.
This is my favorite box in the whole place. But it's you've got smaller boxes.
But it has a giant crack in it.
And you have big ones.
Holy crap. Okay, yeah, that's huge.
The lid is massive.
So if this is functional, what's the, I mean,
So this box is
catalyst chamber must be something.
in a 90-degree turn.
Yep, it's parked right in the corner. It's literally up against the back wall and the side wall. It does have a inner corner.
We have something like this.
How do you get it in there? I don't know.
Who raised the lids up and put these little blocks between the lid and the box
That's
itself?
how we found it.
The lid almost reached a very
We haven't. I don't know why.
stage.
Well, on that small box, we lifted the lid up, but these other ones we
we needed
haven't.
after this level is to smooth it and then
Again, look at all the different types.
And the lid has a big nub on it.
Yeah, those are the handles,
Yeah.
obviously, for picking the lid up.
That actually is a lifting boss. Yeah, that is a nub that's used as a lifting boss. I mean, it seems to be like that, right? There's one on the other end apparently. So it has. This is black. This is a granodiorite. This is like
All right,
cyanide.
pause that. Pause that.
Hang on. Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a granodiorite. It's almost harder than sort of regular granite, but cyanite, I think there's a name for it. But again, not from Aswan. This came from somewhere else. This may be Eastern Desert Stone. But when we walked up to it, maybe I'll just back it up and we'll come back to it. I know it's just stuff, but there's a lot to sort of notice about this box as we roll up. It's cracked. So there's a big crack in it, and I think that may be why it got parked at the end here. There's actually two cracks, and we talk about and it's not as perfectly finished as the other boxes, which tells you a couple things, like that the boxes were worked on down here. And you have the box in the hallway as well it's rough and it's not finished. It's even much rougher than this. But this box, I think, when it developed the crack, they went, okay, we're done with this. We're going to park it over here. It doesn't meet our needs, so we're not going to finish it. And then, but you have all the other boxes which are like polished to that mirror finish, and they're perfect. So it tells you that they were working down here. It also tells you that functionality was important enough that when this crack developed, they likely just shelved it.
Yeah, maybe they were like, well, we'll use that for the little doorway things in the alcove. You know what I mean? They could have taken pieces of this.
Yeah.
But so, what I wanted to ask you about, where I asked you to pause it, was this inset lip on the inside.
Yep.
Do the lids have a part that? Let's see, you're almost there.
I don't know. It's hard to. It does look like it. If I zoom right in, let's try that. And move it over here.
So what I'm asking is on the underside of the lid, does it have a little part that juts down that would fit into that?
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that panel that's cut into the. I'm trying to describe this for people listening too.
Yeah,
there's like a 2-inch channel cut into the inner lip of the box. Like you would imagine a lid would have a piece that went down so that when the lid was perfectly centered over it would fall down in.
Yeah. I just maybe I don't know because we didn't look. We when I was here, I've only seen this once. It almost looks like it's there on the corner here, and that may be the reason why the box is. If you go back, the box is sort of sitting up a little bit. Like the lid, is sitting up a little bit. I don't know if there's stones under there so much as maybe it's sitting on because it's also off center. Maybe it's resting on that inset. You know, that might be.
Well, what would happen? Yeah, because
it's
off too.
So the other interesting thing that I'm noticing about this, because you pointed out the cracks and they've stuck it off in this corner. They never moved it all the way to the alcove, and they didn't finish the fine polishing work on it, and yet the lid is on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I also see around the edges there, earlier when you were looking at the edges of the box, it looks like the same kind of pry bar damage. Like, in other words, when they put the box down, the lid was fully on it, and somebody later came along and pried that lid back at least a little bit.
Maybe.
Because I can't imagine you'd be moving it like that with the lid offset. That would be a pain in the ass, right? So you'd want the lid, if you're going to move it with the lid on it, you want it all the way on there so that it's not unbalanced.
Yeah, good point. I don't know. I don't even know how you would pry that off there with a...
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Like a 30-ton.
I completely agree.
But apparently someone did. Like something happened. I mean, the other option, maybe they just pop the lid on it if you had the ability to lift the lid up and throw it where you want it. I mean, yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It seems odd that it's open like that. So the other thing, Yusuf's saying that the one surface that is pretty smooth is the underside of the lid. So maybe they, I don't know when they down tools, but there is a smooth. This underside of the lid is smoother than the rest of the box. But this strikes me as not finished. I mean, and then it just.
I agree.
You know,
it's not finished and it's not in place.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just interesting to me that it's like they were they moving the box with the lid on it, or do you, like you said, it was easy for them, so they were moving the box and then they were like, well, this whole thing's broken, just stick the lid on top of it and we'll leave it there.
Yeah. Maybe.
Okay.
That lid is monstrous. I mean, it's like 2 feet thick almost or something.
More. That's more. You mean height-wise? It's probably 3 feet. This box, it's 11 feet tall total. Like, Yusuf's standing up on stuff. Like, you stand up on rocks around the side to get this view of the inside here. This box, you can't. I mean, I'm full stretch around here. There's a bunch of rocks that Yusuf was standing on to.
We doubt that this is coming from Aswan, by the way.
No, this is a Sinai stone.
This looks like more like, navigation channel.
In navigation challenge is what he called it.
Yeah. It's in the.
The piece of the lid is definitely smoother.
Okay, so he's pointing out that smoothness on the
cannot
bottom.
imagine handling massive pieces like this in a very narrow places like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want a sense of the height of it, like where we roll up on it here is
Yeah, when you walk up to it.
yeah, it's like, there you go. So it's yeah, I mean you're like 3 feet high. It's like probably 6.5, 7 feet tall, maybe even tall. Like Yusuf, we're about 6 feet, so
Yeah, 7.5.
7.5, and then like
7.5 feet and another three feet up.
or even higher. And you can see it's also boxed out here at the end, like it's a narrower. See that?
Yeah, or is that just a shadow somehow? I don't know.
No, I think the front of the lid is a squarer section that has a lip all the way around it, and then it goes back.
Okay.
And you do see that on a couple of the others. See that? It's like it's boxed out there. But yeah, it's
the interface of the lid is bigger than the body of the lid.
Yeah.
There's no way they took it around that corner. It must have come from down that other hallway. Right? I mean, how could they have gotten it around that corner?
There's nothing, as far as we know, there's nothing behind it. This is the end of the tunnel. This is in the corner.
What?
Unless they found some other discovery, unless they knocked the wall in to figure out, all right, this was a passageway. But no, this is bedrock. They parked it in a corner. Like when you.
Yeah, but how did they get it around? Okay.
So here's the look at it here. That's right. That's the same question, man.
It's like the largest one.
Like that's the end of the tunnel, and then it's just an alcove. There's nothing behind it.
But it has a giant.
There's nothing back there.
No. Okay. it's just an alcove.
Yeah, so it would be interesting to work out the geometry of that. You know, get all the measurements of the interior space,
Find out
the
if you can
measurements of the
actually
box,
take it
and
around
model it to where you could see like what is the tolerance to get this thing around this corner. That would be interesting.
Well, as I said, so that big rose granite box that we saw first off, with the writing on it, there's about a foot of clearance between the width of that box and the width of the tunnel that it had to come in through to get in there. So I in one of my videos I have like that Friends scene where they're trying to pivot to carry a couch up the stairs. I mean, you have to literally go around corners with these things. And then as we get into the main gallery, not only that, you've got to manage put them down in these alcoves where it's like 6 feet. It's a 6 foot drop. And they've put them in the center of these alcoves. They haven't just thrown them in there. They've lowered them into the center of these alcoves.
Yeah, each alcove has an inset pit.
Yeah, it's like 6 feet.
The box fits down it. Yeah, the box fits down it. So not only you have to slide it in there, but then you've got to very carefully lower it so that it doesn't break. Right? Because it would break if you just dropped it down in there.
I mean, this is what it makes me think of.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, all right. Easy. Wait. Stop. What? No. Twist it. I am. No. Other way. You twisted it the wrong way. Okay. No. All right. You know what? All right. Just put it down. Put it down. Just drop it. All right.
That's what it's like.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. So that's that off limit. That's the closed section. Hopefully they open it to the public at some point. They're obviously renovating it, but now we're back into the main gallery and starting to look at like the other boxes. And again, this is what I'm talking about. Like, we're looking down on the roof of this thing. That thing's probably just as tall as that box. It's you're 6-7 feet down, and then we've added our own touch of renovations with the steel girders around the alcoves.
Yeah,
and it's tough to see, but there is an inset cavity on the sides of this, on the sides of these alcoves that housed the false doors.
So now the lid of this box has two inset, what look like lifting
spaces.
Yeah, spaces instead of, whereas the other one had like a
big
middle
nub
piece that jutted out at the end.
That's right. Yeah, it's as if you put something in this. It's a little different. The other thing that's different about this is they pushed the lid off from the back. It's not all the rest of them are opened pushing forward, but they've pushed this one from the back. But this is not as well. This isn't quite polished either. It's close. It seems to be finished and in location, but not quite mirror polished. But the lines on it are magic. Like the faceting of the box is magic.
God, look at that. Yeah, it is beautiful.
And then I see, like, occasionally when the light hits it perfectly, I see these little pock marks on the lid there.
On the side of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't know what that is. And there's actually an unfinished section on that lid there. I don't know. It could be tool marks. It could be...
Yeah, well, they're very regular looking, too. Like, they're patterned.
So we do know that there were chisels used on these boxes. Like the box in the hallway and the box in the lid, you have chiseled. Like it's probably iron chisels. There were chiseling marks definitely made on them. But you also have machining marks. So you have very fine machining marks in the finished boxes. I have not seen any saw cuts on this stone like you see at Abu Sir and those places. Not to say that wasn't possibly a technique that was used, but you definitely have machining marks from the polishing, and then there's definitely chisel marks on them as well. Other than that, I think a lot of the marks got polished out.
Yeah, how would they cut that lid off that box without a saw?
Yeah. You have to saw it. Yeah, there's no other way. It's been sawn. It's then just been worked. I think all the cut surfaces got worked.
Yeah, they're polished out.
And again, this is some of the part I like to laugh about, which is, you show them, like there's the demonstrations of guys using a 3 or a 4 foot copper bar and they're rubbing sand on it, back and forth and slowly working the grain. I mean, you're talking about lengths where you'd have to have a 25 foot or 20 foot bar and make the lengthways cuts on these boxes to then, after you pull it out of the quarry, because the lump of stone that you're pulling out the quarry is probably 150 plus tons. Right. And then you start to get, there's everywhere you turn there, another box.
And the other interesting thing is that there is evidence that they worked the boxes down in the tunnels, and the boxes only fit in the tunnels long ways. And when they're in the tunnels long ways, you don't have a whole lot of clearance on either side. So if you're trying to cut anything in that direction, you're like slamming into the walls in both directions with your saw.
That's right.
Unless it's unless it's a power saw, basically.
Yeah, and there's really there's very little room in the alcoves to work them either, even without the steel girders that we put in. It's just, assuming they dropped them into the alcoves and then worked on them, there's still very little room. And this is an interesting box. This is Mariette's box.
This is the one he blew up.
The one he blew up. In fact, let me, before we jump into that, we'll come back to that. I just want to show you, just for scale too, this is a video that was taken on the trip of my ass getting on one of the boxes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too. Like, is it typically frowned upon to get on them and inside them and everything?
So this is the realm of who you're with and how it works and the backsheesh and the it's not, I'm not hurting it. There's plenty of footprints on it. You can depends on how generous they're feeling and it's everything in Egypt's more or less available for a price. So it's a matter of getting if you can arrange it, you can do it. It's not destructive. We're not hurting it. It's a massive chunk of granite.
Of course.
It's but
that gives you the scale. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah,
and that one is polished. I can see. Yeah.
That one is polished. Yep. And I have the footage looking down from on top. Yeah, there you go. So You can see the back of it. Yeah. Actually, I have the footage looking straight down into it.
Yeah, so you jumped on the box from the hallway, and then you walked all the way to the end, and that just gives you the scale. It's amazing. Yeah. And then it looks like they were scooping damaged parts of the stone out of that one, but then they polished the scoops. That's what
they did. Well,
like.
Whoops. Yeah, that's right. They did polish the scoops, so that's an interesting part of it. And in fact, once we get to the polished boxes where you can really see that's evident, it also puts to rest because the orthodox theory about, well, how did they polish the stone? Well, they got sand and they got rocks and they got water and they rubbed it and they rubbed it and they rubbed it, and it's just but they use like flat piece of stone to polish a flat surface. You can't polish like a convex, egg-shaped surface like that with that method. It's not. You can't do it. It's how did they polish those stones? We don't know, but there's some really interesting evidence for maybe a way that they polished the stone that is coming up towards the end of this video when we get to the box with the writing on it. There's
all right.
Yeah, some interesting ideas. It's possible that they used a liquid. I think there's solid evidence that there was some form of liquid used to polish the stone. Like, call it what you want. I don't believe we do this today. Alchemy, I don't know, but it looks like there's looks to me like evidence of where the liquid has run off the side of a lid of one of these boxes and pooled underneath on the underside of the lid. Now when we look at those boxes, there's a technical difference between the surfaces. There's the polished stuff, and then there's the flat and smooth but not mirror polished side, right? That's the undersides of the lids. And the tops of the boxes. They don't do the full polish job on those. They do the full polish job on the insides, the walls, and on the outsides of the lid and the outside of the box. But so on the underside of this lid, you've got these little drip marks, man, where these liquids come down. It's clearly pooled and dripped down, and where that liquid mark from what looks to me like a water or something like that would have run, that's all perfectly polished and smooth, just like the other parts of the box. And
so they may have some kind of liquid that you just apply it and it polishes the stone.
That seems to be. There's some evidence for that. Now I can't explain it, or
right.
I don't know if we do anything like that, but we'll get to that.
Yeah,
that is coming.
It'd be definitely interesting to get a sample of that to be tested in a lab to see what it's made of.
Yeah. So that box will come. I'll just quickly skip to this recent trip because Marriott's box is interesting. That was the box we were looking at. There was one box. The one box that was found closed. So there was one box still sealed up when Auguste Marriott found it in, I think, the 1850s. I probably keep getting that wrong.
And he had to blow it up. Yeah.
He blew it open with dynamite, right? And then there's me and George Howard scanning a box. It's actually pretty funny. And on this last trip, I went over and I got into it. Which maybe here? No, let's use it. It's one of these videos here, sorry.
No problem.
We will find it. That's that box. I feel like it's...
Yeah, so while you're looking for it, I'll just say it's interesting how the rest of these, the lids are shifted. Somebody came along and opened the boxes.
Yes, someone definitely did.
And then in the 1800s, somebody came along, supposedly somebody who was much more advanced, and decided to blow the box up because opening it that way was too hard.
Yes.
Sliding the lid was too hard, so use dynamite.
This is looking down on that same footage from when I was on the box. So looking down on the inside of the back of it.
Yeah, you can definitely see the mirror finish on that inside there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shiny.
Yeah, and perfect. The corners of magic, right? It's just...
Yes. I find it interesting, too, that there's so many different designs. Like, it's as though, like, you came up with this job. Right. It's like, we need all these boxes, and there were, like, all these different contractors. Like, yeah, I can get you 3, and somebody else, we'll build 10 of them. And so they you have these different methods for building the boxes because you got the two little indentations on the lid for picking it up, and then the other people have the knob that juts out, and I mean, it's just
That's a great point.
They're beveled. Some of them are beveled. Other ones are square and have the bigger faces at the ends. It's just like different. Hey man, my box is superior to your box.
Yeah, so it's
but
like
they serve the same purpose, right? They all have this general purpose, but they're just different designs.
different manufacturers making their own boxes.
They all have a very regular and perfect interior space. Maybe that's the important part, right? I think it's. I tend to think, and I've not seen it done, and I'd love to see it done. Is to have a comparison of the size of the inside spaces, because all the boxes are slightly different sizes and shapes, like you say, different types of stone. But I'd like to see a measurement of the inside cavities. Are all the inside cavities the same?
Yeah.
Because
now, there was one that you said was small and was circular. There was a circular interior too. It looked like from the video. So that would be.
That's
definitely
a smaller one.
Size.
Right. I think that is a possibility that was either moved in or being moved out. It's definitely that's a very. There's a couple boxes that kind of stand alone. There's that one, and then there's the limestone box, I think, that's next to it. It's really rough, and I think that those are. There may have been more boxes that have been moved, but that's definitely a waste. That's a very small box made from granite. It's possible the Dynastics did that. I don't know that it's much it rules out. Certainly late period they had iron tools. They could do some pretty good stuff. And it's it's not something that's horrendously heavy. It's probably still 10, 15 tons, but probably a bit more manageable than 70.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is Marriott's box.
This was perfect, and it was blown open.
And you can kind of get the mirror finish on the inside. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so you're showing the corners,
or inside corners.
Yeah.
And the beautiful granite,
It's amazing.
You can hear that resonance.
Yeah, they're definitely resonating there.
What was that? So this is Marriott's box that was blown open. This was found sealed. Yeah, come on in.
Yeah.
A really quick and easy way to test the interior space is to get into every one and hum until you find that resonant frequency.
Yeah.
Because if they're all the same size, they'll all be the same. It'll all have the same fundamental.
The same resonance. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't get into all of them. I mean, there's some of the spaces aren't big enough.
Well, you can just hum into it, though.
You could hum into it. You could lean over it. Yeah, and probably hum into it.
Yeah.
You're right.
So the rubble that's in the bottom of that, is that
That's
material from the box?
Yeah, from the box. Yeah, they threw it all in there.
Huh.
But yeah, interesting box. So nothing in it. When he dynamited, it was empty. There was no balls found in the Serapeum. So one of the passageways you see before we walked into what's known as the great galleries, the greater galleries, there's another set of tunnels that don't connect to anything we're seeing here. They don't connect to the Serapeum, but they're known as the lesser galleries. And there's much smaller, much cruder tunnels. And in those, they found a bunch of apis balls that were mummified in wooden crates. And from that, they just sort of smear it across the Serapeum and say, well, this was clearly these were boxes for bulls too, which there's really no evidence for. And looking at here is the floor tiling, so you can see the boxes further inset into the floor. I think it's possible. My intuition here is that the dynastic Egyptians likely added the floor tiles afterwards, like they came in and actually tiled around the box.
Do we know actually how far the box goes down into it? Even is it possible that it goes beyond the floor tiles?
No, I think you could probably see it at the front there. I imagine those floor tiles are like the other ones we saw where you're talking about maybe a foot. Maybe it's a little more than a foot thick, these tiles in the ground. I suspect the box just sits on the ground there. And there's a tile missing at the front there. I mean, I don't know. That's what I think it is. I think it's just sitting on the bedrock, and those floor tiles are about the same as all the other floor tiles we've seen.
Okay, so they weren't digging holes to put the boxes in then?
No, which is why I don't know about that other chamber we saw before. That might be an anomaly, but yeah, I don't think so. I think they were just putting the boxes down and then building a floor around them.
So if we were to remove the modern floor and the ancient tiled floor and go back to just the bare, the original flooring of the entire Serapeum.
Yeah.
How far down do those alcoves drop? Do you have any?
No, well, I think it's just that I think the box is sitting on that bedrock, and there's about a foot of floor tile been built around it.
And then up to the hallway, how far? Because you're showing you're standing up by the lid. So it's
right. So the hallway's only the modern floor. Actually, there's glass tiles in the floor, so you can look down and see the original floor. And it's only like half a foot. I mean, they've built basically a raised walkway. It's probably the width of a 2x4 or 2x6 or something like that. Whatever they used to build the floor, and it's a good thing they did because it was sand and dirt. And by all accounts, when people would go in here before they put the floor in, you'd be choking in dust. It's just the dust would be thick. So this wooden flooring is quite a blessing. And in fact, this is a good example of how straight and really astonishing the tunnel system is. As we're walking between that alcove and now what I consider the main part of the Serapeum, we're just getting to, with most of the impressive boxes. It's a longer passageway with no alcoves, but it's this dead straight. I mean, it's also 300-400 feet long. Like, it's a massive underground complex. It's like a giant wine cave or something.
So if you're going to be accomplishing this kind of work, how come the writings is so crude? So, if we cannot depend on these writings to date and relate, then we are missing something. Well, we need certain. Like here. This one is not aligned with this one.
And this one also has some of the dips, the bubbles.
That's my buddy Luke who's talking.
Well, first of all, parts. And
before we dive into this box, we're going to take another break real quick.
Yeah, let's do that. Take another break. Be right back.
And we're back with Ben, Uncharted X, Brothers of the Serpent, Swapcast Extravaganza. Looking at the Serapeum, and now what did you say? This is the part with the most impressive boxes.
Yeah, this is all the really. I mean, they're all impressive up to this point, but this is mostly the finished granite boxes that are really shiny and polished, and also has the one that has all of the writing on it.
Oh yeah.
Piece of rock or whatever you have, you will never reach that level of polishing as same as the flat surface.
Actually, so he's talking about we talked about the polishing. Let me just.
Align with this one.
And this one also has some of the dips, the bubbles.
Yeah.
Like
Well, first of all, we looked at these deeper parts, and as a stone carver, I was like saying, this is impossible. Why? Because I saw that inside these lower parts, the polishing still in these deeper ones as good as the one on the surface. And if you follow that manual style, of course, you will never be able to go to these pits in the stone. You will never reach with your sandpaper or with your piece of rock or with whatever you have. You will never reach that level of polishing as same as the flat surface on the outside. So we had many ideas looking around it and thinking maybe this is a kind of bacteria that affected the stone and things like that. Until one day, and there is no coincidence, but when it was the time for us to see and realize, like these ones especially, you see these ones?
It's like a circle, semicircle.
Yeah, and it's polished on the inside, same like anything else.
Inside the dip.
Yeah.
I don't know, huge one inside. Underneath the lid of this last box, you can see that.
Yeah. So that's that point we made earlier about the fact that you have this perfect polishing also in the divots, of which there are many in these boxes.
Yeah.
They've definitely emptied out a lot of cracks here, and and they've also faceted the sides.
Yep. Did they do this all around the exterior of the box part too? Because I see them in the lid.
They're all around the box. Yep. They're lid, body, wherever they found cracks.
I love the cuts on that one. They're just so sharp. Wow.
Yeah, this is a nice box too because this has that vein of material in it. This is something that I made a point of pointing out in my last video about when I commented about geopolymers, and this is probably one of the reasons why it's not a geopolymer is that this is a vein of rock that came out the ground, and you can. And there's a bunch of objects that have these types. these veins of material on them.
So what is is that granite with a vein of quartz in it, or
it's granite? Yeah, I'm not sure what the vein is. I'm not no expert.
Feldspar.
Yes, I mean some material.
Yeah.
Don't know. And they're all again. These aren't rows. Huh? Sorry.
You guys are continuing down the hallway and left, right. We're looking into the alcoves and showing the boxes, and these are very similar in styles, but yeah, they've got these scoop marks like somebody took an ice cream scoop to the lids and to the boxes, but that is also polished to a high shine.
Yeah, they're mirror finish, and they're just covered in dust, which is just not a natural property for granite to be shiny like that. It takes quite a lot of work. And again, not rose granite, so most of these are all black granite or syenite or granodiorite or something that have come from
lower slab,
further away.
Yeah.
Getting a close look at
some of these lids have been shifted forward, like you were pointing out.
Yep, they're all open. And again, you see the alcove on the side? This is where the granite stele with the false door shape would have been. In the side of that alcove. And again, here's another. There's no floor tiles left in here, so you can get a sense of the depth of the box. It's sitting on bedrock. I think this is what most of the chambers look like. A lot of the limestone, I think, it was probably just quarried. I mean, along with everything else. All these granite steles were quarried. They probably the boxes were probably too big to quarry. They just left them alone.
So what I don't understand then is, when is this quarrying taking place? If you have one period where according to your idea that the ancient Egyptians found this place and found these boxes in here, and then they revered it, so they brought all these tiles in, they tiled it, they're trying to preserve it, they're renovating it, they're putting their own floors and walls in there. And then at some later date, other people find that, and then they take the blocks out to build other stuff.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what happened in the last couple thousand years, like 3,000 years. I mean, even go further back, a lot of these sites have been quarried continuously for that period. Even sites like this, I mean, there was clearly people got in here. It had occupation for a long time. It was probably then quarried and then lost, and then rediscovered eventually. We have records of it being used after or during the end of the Egyptian civilization. There's a long period, and then anything on the surface certainly, but this sort of stuff as well. It's all, it's just later civilizations come and take the stone. They don't seem to care much about it, and it's been going on right up until really 100 years ago. These sites have been quarries, for. But yeah, I mean, even
fragments of these boxes, like for example the one that was blown up by what's his name,
Marriott.
Yeah. That would be a good candidate for luminescence dating. They've been in the dark this whole time.
Yeah, actually.
And and they had to have been moved through the sunlight from wherever they were quarried to get here. So the last time they were exposed to sunlight was right before they came down in these tunnels. So it'd be interesting to get some luminescence dating and find out how long they've been in the dark.
Well, is it also? I mean, would that still apply if they'd been worked when they were down here? Because it was a rough block and then it was worked. This is one of my favorite boxes, actually.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Just beautiful shapes, and then it's also that when the camera pans to the side and you just get this reflection on the side of the box. It's so like a mirror and just smooth. Like you can see how smooth those the scoops are. These scoop marks. And again,
it looks like they took pretty big scoops out of the bevel of that side there.
Yep, big chunk out the side. What seemed to be, and you just don't see these on the inside of the boxes. The insides are always perfect.
That's interesting.
Whatever it seemed to me that the important part was likely the inside of the box that had, and it's just straight and flat and square.
Remind me, when we go to this place, to bring a huge bottle of Windex and some paper towels.
We could definitely take some time with paper towels to clean this place up.
Yeah.
So another question is going back to the intent of the original builders, whoever they were. It doesn't seem like they ever intended for these boxes to come back out. I mean, they were put in here and it was this is a permanent setup.
Yeah, I think so. Once those boxes are down in those alcoves,
I mean, how are you going to lift it back up? I mean, I guess you could do it if you had some kind of magical technology.
Maybe, yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing too. Like these boxes don't have the the bosses or the nubs on them.
Yeah.
Which I just had a thought. It's like, okay, so the unfinished boxes do.
Yeah.
And some of them have the insets, but the one in the unfinished, so maybe they pop the lid on them and then they polish them off and they're like, all right, they're closed, they're sealed.
Yeah.
We're not actually going to get the lid off it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they didn't even ever plan to take the lids off, which is strange too. But you know, the boxes with the insets lifting, I don't know what they're called, lifting alcoves.
Yeah,
lifting.
like the square holes in the lid that looks like you could, you'd shove something in there to lift it, right?
Yeah, and you can see that in one of them, at least that you showed a while back, it looked like whoever actually opened the box tried to use that with a pry bar of some type because it was all shattered.
Yeah.
Around those eyes. So it's weird that they would have some of them have them, some of them don't have them, some of them have different ways of. It's just
It's infuriatingly mysterious.
Yes.
I love it. Yeah, and see the floor. These are a lot of the limestone tiles that the dynastics likely added. They plastered the ceiling. They didn't, they put their limestone over everything, and that's all since been falling down. So we get to, we have several more of these boxes. Skip it forward here, and then we get to the box with the writing on it, and this is the one they let you go down to see because it's supposedly the most valuable.
And so this is very near the end. It looks like the end
passage,
the hallway there.
Yes, and then there's this little hole in the wall that stretches off into the distance at the end of the passageway here that we talked about. But yeah, so this is towards the end. And the other thing about these alcoves is none of them face each other. They're all offset. So there's no two alcoves like face to face. They're all offset.
Yeah, when you look at a overhead diagram of the tunnel system, it looks like a skeleton key or something.
Something like that, right? Yeah, it's the fact that they're all offset sort of triggers something in my head too. Like, does it mean it's a functional thing? I don't know. It's like you just can't have them lined up with each other. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's accidental, but. So this is the box they let you down into. It's a giant, magically flat, perfect granite box that has got these chicken scratch writings made into it. I'm sure useful.
We can see how crude these lines are.
Too bright reflection. No, yours is good, Yusuf.
Okay.
Ben's is really bright.
We can see the glyphs itself is very, very crude. The tool is hardly scratched the surface of the stone. And somebody can do these edges, these lines.
They're not straight. Look at,
and then
they're not parallel.
Yeah, look at this. The tool is totally like soft, and even this here, if this, we believe these writings here is from the late period or Greco-Roman time as well. The writing on the surface.
The style of the writing.
The style of the writing, yes. And supposedly at this time there was more iron.
Yeah, of course. Right?
You know what I mean?
Well, this is probably iron, and this is what iron looks like when you scrape, or what granite looks like when you scrape it with iron.
Yeah. Here we can find an empty shell, and then there's still this part of the stone. That this work was being done by the priest in order to trade it. Right. And then where does Egyptologist come in this? Usually, if we find the name here, for example, imagine the name Ptolemaeus is going to be added here later. Imagine these writings are written, and then later the name Ptolemaeus will come here. We will depend on this name to say that this box was made during the time of Ptolemaeus, and he ordered the priest to manufacture it specially to give offering for the Apis bull, and there goes the whole story.
Who is he saying? What name?
Ptolemy.
Okay. All right. Ptolemy. Okay. Yeah.
Ptolemaeus. Yeah. So that's the point. Like, there's the fact that there's an empty shen or empty cartouche there is very interesting because again, it just hints that they're selling it. Here's a great example of a divot in the box that's been polished. Like, it's not a smooth scoop out, but they've scooped out a crack. But look how beautifully every little complex curve and surface in this divot is polished. The light's just reflecting off it like a mirror. And it's that idea of you rubbing this with sand and rocks. It's like, good luck. And then, so this is
Right.
the other thing. On the underside of the lid, you can now. This is where you can see some of the very fine machining marks. I don't know how they're going to show up for you guys on the video.
Yeah, we see some lines. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's actually some horizontal lines looking across it, like he's following him with his finger there.
Yep.
We can
see 'em.
Very fine machining marks. Because again, remember the underside of the lid hasn't been polished to a mirror. You're seeing a reflection because it's very flat. It's been ground flat, but it's not polished like the rest of the box.
And the top of the rim is also not polished?
The top of the lid, you mean? Yeah, right.
The top of the rim
that's
of the
right.
box.
That's right. Yeah, the top, like the mating surfaces aren't mirrored polished. That's right. They're ground flat. They're really very flat. In fact, it's very much like the box at Lahoon that I just did a video on. Not polished, but ground really flat, and it still reflects light because of the grinding. But hasn't
So
been
it's
polished.
still a precision flat surface. It's just not polished.
That's right.
So,
you can
when
sort
you
of
run
see-
when you run your hand on it, can you feel those tool marks with your fingers?
Not you can
Not
feel
really.
it's not polished, but there's some very fine marks there. I couldn't really feel much, but where there's a difference, you can definitely feel the difference between the polished surface and the flat surface, the underside of the lid, and that becomes important because this is in this sort of cocked off part of the lid here is where there's this evidence of what looks like a liquid that's come down the side and eddied underneath it, and it seems, and wherever it's eddied underneath it, it's really, you touch it, it's that same smooth polished surface that's on the rest of the box, and you can just run your hand down. It's like very, very obvious when you touch it. You can also, it's pretty obvious when you see it to me as well.
So this is the smooth surface of granite, but not shiny. This is shiny. This is not shiny. Like between them here. This is where we found the truth.
Where we
A
found the
liquid.
truth.
Some kind of liquid.
You see it really
So
clearly.
the liquid
Oh yeah, I see it.
leaks down here and then forms these lines with drops.
Yeah, so he's trailing
And
down the
that's how-
side of the
same like how you read that somebody.
Just go ahead.
Well, I was just saying he's what he's talking about is the liquid draining down the side of the lid and then pooling up on the underside of the unpolished surface of the lid.
At the corner there, and leaving
right.
traces of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's as if a liquid sort of pooled up and then dripped, and you can see it really clearly here, along here, and all along the edge of it where it sort of came underneath, and then just touching it, that's where you can see it and you can feel it, and it's not a varnish, you know, it's not like, in fact, where you see this is another thing, where you see the boxes are chipped, and if you look up, I've tried to get some photos of it, I'm sure I have them somewhere, but just let me describe it. It almost looks like there's a millimeter or two of the end of the stone is almost like that polish is penetrated. It's like this, you know, it's like a harder casing. It's like this. It's not just surface. It's where it's chipped off. You can kind of see that there's a discoloration of a millimeter or two on the edge of that surface. It's not.
So it's penetrated like a stain would on wood,
Almost.
like when you.
Yeah, that's maybe the description for it. But anyone that goes and sees these, go look when you find these polished surfaces like this. Look on where it's been cracked or something. Try and look, and you'll see that there's a depth to it.
Okay.
Was walking on top of it because obviously no doubt about that. And these where that liquid ran exactly the same shiny surface like that. And it gave it all the explanations we need. And also explained how the polishing reached all these deeper levels. So where is the theory now of polishing with the sand under the water under the rock? It's only on the scene on the wall, but not on the real artifact. Which one I'm going to believe? Of course, the real artifact is the one that tells you the absolute truth.
So whether or not it was, some kind of magic liquid, that the fact that there are those run lines proves that it's not sand and somebody rubbing on it with sand, because you could not get that effect.
I think so, right? And I think that you would be challenged to get that the polished effect. Just try and test it in one of those divots, or try and test it in a surface that's not flat and see how far you get. Like again, this is the realm of the experimentalists. You know, it's the This is the Chris Dunn test. It's why everybody that comes out and look, I'm grinding a stone pot, or I'm doing, I'm testing these. I'm showing you that it can be done because I've dug a trilinear corner in a piece of granite with hand tools. It's the 4-step. You have to encompass and demonstrate that you can achieve the most difficult aspects of these challenges as well. Like that's how you prove it. You have to include the most difficult aspects. You know, it's like, and that in some cases that may include some of the geometry of the overall object. I mean, there's a lot to it. And by the way, I just wanted to back that up because one of my most favorite parts of this is as we turn this corner, you just look at the reflection, the beautiful reflection on the stone, and how mirror-like it really is as you just go around the corner there. It's just such a fine piece of work, and it, I just think it's been defaced. So yeah, I think a lot of these things could be determined. I mean, I think more experiments and more testing. I'm not the guy to do that sort of stuff. I don't have the equipment, the know-how, like the space to do it. I guess even. I know there are people trying, and I think it's all good. A good thing to do, but I think the Chris Dunn test in his book, where he lays out the 4 conditions you got to satisfy to sort of say, okay, we know how it was done. I think that's the test. I really do.
Right, match the most difficult parts, not just the easy parts.
Yeah, using the methods you say that were done, you need to then also replicate the most difficult elements of the problem, and then carefully compare it with the original results. And you also have to take into account all aspects of the original artifact. You can't ignore parts of it. You've got to kind of You've got to just take account of all of it. And then so here on the back of the box, you see the false door that's been drawn on it.
Yes,
right. Mimicking
those granite.
Other false doors. Right.
Yeah.
I also want to point out what we were talking about earlier is that the alcoves are all offset from each other, right?
Yep.
You were commenting on that.
That's right.
That also makes it much more difficult to turn these things into the alcoves when you're moving them in. If the alcoves were adjacent to each other, it would be a lot easier to get it in there because you'd have now an open space on the other side where you could move the back end of the box to angle it in there.
All right, so I have an idea on why the alcoves are offset.
All right.
I mean, it's just an idea, but the machine that cuts the alcove sits against the back wall.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it cuts that alcove, and then you spin it around and set it against this wall, and you cut that alcove, and it can't, I mean, I don't know. It might be an idea.
It's a good idea. I would say it is only there are some alcoves that face tunnels that like entryways.
So that is
there are some that don't
the stream. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to do a flex.
Okay.
We are a lot weaker though.
Throw that idea out.
Well, they use the tunnel machine for this.
Maybe
There's a tunnel machine and an alcove machine. The alcove machine needs the wall, and then later they come and do the tunnel machine to get the tunnel.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. That is a divot.
Thank you.
There's some interesting stuff there.
That's the rough machine.
The rough machine. So we do have rough machining, and it's still lost technology.
It's highly abrasive, right? That looks like it's taking just chunks out of the rock.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot. This is some other machining that just looks like it's been just hammered out in rows here for whatever reason, who knows. One of the few spots.
Yeah, rough cut. Yeah,
bottom left of the back of the box.
So, wait, you think that's original? You don't think that's later work?
I'm not sure. Yusuf seems to think that it's an example of some tool that's just abrasively shaped the rock. Maybe he's right. I'm not sure. And to me, from this, it's like it could be done with a hand chisel, like an iron chisel eventually. But even that's like a lot of work. I mean, I'm sure you could, but it seems to have these regular lines in it.
Yes, but it looks like the writing and the crude chiseling went
the writing's kind of
continued into that area that's been busted out.
Yeah.
Or they just couldn't finish that corner.
Yeah, I guess.
Or they didn't finish the corner. Yeah, I'll have to have a closer look at it next time I'm there to see how far this writing actually goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. I don't know if you can tell which one came first, really.
Yeah, I would point out though that the regular lines in that really rough cut area are not much different than the regular lines in the rough chiseled writing. They're not.
Well, other than being a lot deeper and more effective.
Other than being much deeper.
Like this is like I mean, it's weird. They supposedly had iron. Like, again, this is the best. I sort of got to qualify this a little bit because it's the best example of the difference between the writing, the technology involved in the writing, and the technology involved in the object itself. That said, the dynastic Egyptians were absolutely capable of some amazing work and amazing writing, and they did that in a lot of places. And in a lot of boxes, it's a much higher quality writing. Now, it's possible that this was. I don't think this is the case, but it's possible this was like the first step before they carved it. But I don't think it is because there's so many areas where the lines are literally wavy. Now, you see it on a lot of other objects. They used straight lines and rulers, and they gridded out stuff, so they sort of paint by numbers kind of deal. We see that on objects in the museum, so they were capable of doing straight, clean, precise work, and then with the chisels, and they were able to make really sharp-looking hieroglyphs, particularly in the later period when they had access to iron. This is some sort of amateurish thing that happened to it. It's because I don't think it's the first stage, but I do think that they were certainly capable of doing better work. And you see more examples of better work, but even then, those examples are still, you look closely at them, they still are obviously done with hand tools and chisels. They were done with hand tools. There's just no, you don't, and Yusuf has looked at a lot of this stuff. He will tell you that he's never seen power tool marks on anything, on any writing. You see it on objects, on boxes, on slabs, and on statues, but you don't see it involved in the writing. So, I think that there's a good case to be made that all of the writing may have been done by the dynastic Egyptians. That's my point, is that even with the nice writing, you can see it's not polished. It's done with a hand tool, and it's usually on a well-made polished object in the case of these boxes. This is just the best example of it, where you highlight the technology gap, but it becomes more subtle, and you look at the much nicer glyphs that are on things like obelisks, for example. Like some of the obelisks, the hieroglyphs are incredible. I still think there's a difference between those glyphs themselves and the object.
So what do you think that means about the builder culture? That they didn't write on anything? Does that imply?
I don't know. I don't. It seems, a lot of this stuff screams that it was functional to me, the same as the pyramids, the Giza Plateau. Yet at the same time, you have the statues, which I think a lot of those came from that culture as well, particularly the giant ones, the perfect ones. So there was definitely there was a culture there involved in it as well. There was, that's you can't say that's a functional statue. It's obviously it's representative of something. It's culture.